Alrighty. You should start seeing it come in any moment now. Always got to wait for that delay to kick in. Always waiting for delays. But I'm pretty sure y'all can hear me, see me. So welcome. I'm going to I'm going to bring you down a rabbit hole. Now, law and politics, they are intertwined with one another. That is undoubtable. And today's a special edition of this show because we are covering the live results from the Manitoba Provincial election 2023. This is a race between two parties and a third distant party trying desperately to become the difference maker, the balance of power in the provincial legislature. We have Wab Canoe, who you see on screen right now, the Indigenous man there, representing the New Democrat Party. And then they're going up against the incumbent government of Heather Stephenson's PC party, or Progressive Conservative. Well, if you've seen other videos on my channel, you know I've been watching this race pretty closely. I think it's always a good indication of where the country's headed when you get down to the nitty gritty. Now, rejecting conservatives in one part of the country doesn't mean they're rejecting conservatives in every part of the country. That's not the analysis that we're going to end up doing today, because it's not about conservative or liberal or New Democrat or socialist or whatever they want to call themselves. We're looking at trends, patterns, how we can extrapolate what we've seen happening here and apply it to the rest of the country. A country as big and diverse as Canada, it's really hard to say, well, these people here voted this way, that means people in another part of the country are going to vote either the same way or a different way. You always look for what's driving that vote. Now, it's no secret, there's a lot of anxiety right now in the economy. Inflation's pretty high in Canada. Cost of fuel's going up, cost of living's going up, and housing is ever so expensive. Of course, I have the stream muted right now because, as you can see in the timer counting down on the bottom right side, we're not quite at end of polls yet. So they can't start counting or they can't start reporting the results until the polls officially close, and that's going to be another 9 minutes. So I'm just going to keep that muted. Talk a little bit about what's going on. Kind of the process of an election analyst, especially. And we'll go into some of the first results. We're going to take a quick look over here. Been spending a lot of time on this page. You should be familiar with it by now. Last time I checked in, there was actually a 32 seat majority predicted for the NDP, so that's come down in one day. And so you can see the peak of the PCs right there. Again, this is the popular vote projection, so it doesn't necessarily translate to seats, but it's always going to tell you what the people are thinking about. You're seeing this little bit of a comeback from the Liberals right at the bottom here. And, well, the Green Party's irrelevant. So, I said that the PCs had peaked way too early in the contest, because way back in September, you can see the time down here, the date, right? September 1st is this line right here. So the PCs were popular in September, but then as the month dragged on, as the election dragged on, their popularity started going down. You can see that the NDP was in the lead for most of the run-up to this election, right? They had a huge lead here. And you can see that their boost in fortunes is correlated with the descent of the Liberal and the collapse of the third parties. So I think where we're going to end up on election night. Now, polls tend to have a bit of a lag. They have a few days of lag. They're not capturing exactly what's going on the ground. They takes a few days to gather the data and then report it. So what I do think is this number may come down another notch. I still think the NDP is going to win this election. It may be with a 29 or 30 seat majority. Now, 29 is exactly what you need for a majority. So if they get less than that, then what becomes really important right here is the number of seats that the Liberals get, the third place party. You can see that their support's been holding steady at 9%. If they actually end up overperforming on election night and a lot of last second undecided voters break for the Liberals and this starts going up into like 10-11 territory, it's going to bite into both of these bars. And I think it's going to hurt the NDP, the orange bar, more than the blue bar. Now, I'm not saying that Liberal voters do not, it's impossible that Liberal voters don't come over from the PCs, but what I'm saying is that the policies, the ideological projection of both of these parties are more similar to each other than to the Progressive Conservative Party. All of these parties seem to prioritize healthcare as the election issue, so I think calling this the center-right party, it may not even be accurate. It might just be a centrist party. Of course, in Canada, we have our universal healthcare system, which we absolutely adore and cannot touch. It's untouchable by anyone. Anyone who one of the quickest ways to lose an election is to go on TV and say you're going to privatize healthcare. So that's where we're at. We'll have a look down at the odds of winning the election. Yeah, so they're still favored. The NDP is still favored to win this election with their majority. I saw the odds of a tie came up pretty briefly and then went back down. There's also the odds of a minority government, which would give the Liberals a ton of power. Now, my last video where I covered all of this stuff, I have a much where I covered the debate. I gave a comprehensive breakdown of how minority governments work. If you're my viewers in the States, you won't be familiar with this concept, but essentially we run on a plurality. So you don't need to beat all the other parties combined. You just need to beat every other party as an individual. So if you get the most votes, most seats, you win. Manitoba is divided up into these districts. And the way that the districts are balanced is usually through population, which means that rural districts tend to be quite large in land area. They have roughly the same population as maybe 3 or 4 neighborhoods in Winnipeg. That naturally causes Winnipeg being Manitoba's largest city, its capital city. That means that Winnipeg dominates 57 separate districts, and Winnipeg dominates them. There's no map here, and there will be a map once the polls close, so I'm going to move back over to the live stream. I have no idea what that is, but we'll get distracted by it. Just pop this in the screen so we can watch it. But the big news out of the U.S. today, apparently they weren't satisfied deposing the Canadian Speaker of Parliament, so they had to go and dump the American Speaker of the House. The House of Representatives, so that's hilarious. That was a procedural vote. Apparently, it's unprecedented that a sitting Speaker of the House of Representatives has been deposed in that way. So I guess they're going to have to do a new choosing the Speaker. And I remember how hard it was for McCarthy to get in the first time around, the wheeling and dealing he had to do, and a lot of the anxiety leading up to that final vote for him to get confirmed. I don't think they're looking forward to going through all that again. Over here in Canada, I think, we elected another Liberal as the Speaker to replace the guy who made the oopsies in honoring a Nazi at the Parliament. Um, we ended up replacing him with another Liberal MP, so it's the Speaker of the House is a member of the government. That's Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party, so they hold the speakership. The Liberals don't have a majority. They rely on the support from the federal NDP to prop them up. But apparently, this speaker was able to get enough votes that it wasn't a big issue. Um, I don't know. There's not much more to say about that. The role of the speaker in Canada is very similar to the role of the speaker in the House of Representatives. Um, However, there's more of an emphasis on the neutrality of the role in Canada. So you don't see the speaker become this public figure that sort of controls the agenda of the government of that day. Oh, and I heard that Dianne Feinstein passed away too. I know she's been in American politics for a very, very, very long time. So, um, that's about all the political news wrap up I have. We're now down to the last minute before polls close. I guess now's a good time to explain what I do for a living, why I'm here. So, I've explained this 100 times. I am an election analyst. But what exactly does that mean? Well, my background is in information systems, right? Computer technology. Um, I study the data that's generated from election campaigns for a living. Now, there's two ways you can go about doing this. There's two kind of groups of people that will hire you. The politicians themselves will hire you, and they want you to tell their campaign manager if they're going to win or not. So I've dealt with quite a few candidates in my day at the local level. I've never worked for any major party or anything. Um, I have the other group of people that would hire you are media organizations that are looking to inform viewers how to kind of digest the data that comes in. So you're actually going to see people who work for this media company. We're watching the CBC live feed. You're going to be watching people who do the same job that I do on the TV. They're CBC election analysts. And I don't plan on giving them too much time when I unmute. I will unmute the stream so that we can listen in here as we're just getting started with the count.
You are looking at the seat of power in Manitoba, near the meeting place of the Red and Assiniboine Rivers, where people have been coming together for thousands of years. We have gathered in the rotunda of this legislative building to give you up-to-the-minute results and analysis of CBC's Manitoba Votes 2023.
Yeah, when they do
189 Manitobans have put themselves forward for the chance to walk up these stairs.
Yeah, when they do the more the analyst portion of the show, I will mute it just so that I can do my commentary. I don't want to run into issues with either competing with the sound of the broadcast, and also potential copyright issues. Want to make sure that I'm providing as much transformative content as possible. We are. I love the inception of watching your own broadcast on the TV stand there. This type of stuff is a pretty big business. Election analysts good election analysts make a pretty decent living providing this type of commentary and analysis for media companies. There are also partisan data analysts that work for the parties themselves. And so these party leaders would hire people similar to my skill set to advise them. One of the biggest uses for an election data analyst is they will tell you where to deploy scarce resources. Every election in the history of all time has suffered from a scarcity of resources, right? If you come from a project management background, you're aware of that triangle of the three T's, right? Time, talent, and treasure. Well, treasure is the political donations. The talent is your volunteers, and your time is obviously the election campaign. I'm also going to go into a little bit about the election laws that govern these elections here. We'll see if any issues come up where we get to see some of these laws enforced or in action. I saw that there were some reports that there were technical issues at some of the voting stations, and so the Manitoba elections legislation will be able to will give guidance on how to rectify that in order to give people the chance to vote. One of the things they can do is if the tabulation machines break down, they can switch to manual hand counting for voting. It was also announced today that a candidate withdrew at the last second, but because the ballots were printed ahead of time, there's actually some ramifications for that. Also, you're well aware that voters will sometimes vote in advance polls. And so this candidate withdrew after the advance polls closed. And so what are the ramifications of that? Well, the Elections Act actually makes it very clear if a candidate withdraws from a race for any reason, after the ballots have been printed, the advance polls have opened and closed, but before the actual election day, their name will continue to stand on the ballot, and anyone who votes for them will have been considered to have rejected their ballot. Or sorry, not the reject the ballot, but reject the vote. You can see on the screen there is a graphic from the incumbent government from last session, the 2019 election, which yielded a very sizable PC majority government. You need 29 seats to form the majority. As you can see on the screen there, I think my face is covering it just a little bit. I can. Well, you know what? I'm not going to mess with my layout too much because that will probably just go poorly. But take my word for it. You can see that there are 57 seats there. These cool fancy graphics. I wonder how much they pay to generate these. There's a map of the riding, so I was looking to get a chance to see this in a moment. So of course, that's the city of Winnipeg, is this large boundary here. And you can see that the majority of the seats concentrated in around Winnipeg. The suburban areas of the city tend to be more conservative than the downtown core, which is basically center here. If you've been watching me before, I've been keeping my eyes on Winnipeg mostly because that's where the battle is gonna be won or lost. If they ever do zoom back into Winnipeg, I'll show you which areas in particular I want to keep an eye on, but we'll get a chance to come back to that at some point. I can pull up a map on the CBC website, but then I won't get the chance to see some of the results as they come in. I don't want to be doing too much flipping back and forth between screens. And back to the kind of the role of the election analyst. I had outlined kind of if you're coming from the project management background, you understand that you don't have enough people, money, and time to knock every single person across the entirety of the province. Manitoba has, I think, 1.5 million people living in it. I saw a number earlier that said there's 870,000 people eligible to vote in the election. Of course, the discrepancy are people who are not eligible to vote. People under the age of 18, people who are not Canadian citizens. In Canada, unlike the US, if you're convicted of a felony offense, or what we call an indictable offense, you don't lose your right to vote. In fact, it has no impact on your right to vote. You're even allowed to vote from prison, if I recall correctly. So, but yeah, the ineligible people to vote would make up the difference of the population of the province. Obviously, anyone under the age of 18. and non-citizen immigrants. Um, yeah, because you can get permanent residency, right? As Americans would be familiar with the concept of a green card. We call those permanent residents here. And so they're not eligible to vote, but um, if you read through the Election Act, they are eligible to donate to political parties and to volunteer and do other, you know, um, perform other, I guess, roles within a campaign. And so um, they just can't cast the vote, but they can help in many other ways. And then, of course, if you're a Canadian citizen, whether you were born in Canada or you acquired it through a citizenship um, ceremony, you're able to cast a vote completely um, and participate in democracy as a whole. Um, those three on the screen there are at the election headquarters of the three parties. I think from left to right, it was the same order as the counters. So, yeah, PC's on the left, the NDP in the middle, and the Liberals on the right, which actually is kind of backwards. You think it should be the other way around, but, whatever. Whatever. I'm not going to question it. So, again, nothing interesting is going on here. So this would be another person that, again, has a similar skill set to mine. They're a professor at the University of Manitoba, and so I'm going to presume that they're probably more experienced and skilled at this type of analysis than I am. But they're not going to go talk about anything interesting right now. These CBC rarely ever speculates on the outcome of the results. They're going to reflect on kind of the issues that came up during the campaign, some of the philosophy or the positions or the ideologies of the parties, and kind of how voters respond to that kind of stuff. So you're not going to hear them make any bold predictions, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to react to the news as it comes in. So we're still in the prediction phase right now. I'm still thinking that some of the first results we're going to come in are going to be from smaller rural towns where they only have to count 100 ballots, and then they can send that to the election authority. I will go over a little bit on kind of how the counting process works. So again, a lot of these procedures are governed by the elections of legislation in that province. Every province has a different election legislation, and the country of Canada has a different legislation for the federal government. Most of them are very similar to one another, and you're going to see a lot of commonality between them, between the provinces. So the procedure, of course, elections are always conducted by secret ballot. The idea is that you're not supposed to know who voted for whom. And that means that when you pull a ballot out of the ballot box, it can't be identifiable. There's no way to link the ballot back to the person who filled it in. It also, you're not able to see who put the ballot. You're not able to tie that ballot to any single person who voted. So, in the manual days of counting, you would fold your ballot up and put it into a box. Then they would tape the box with tamper-proof tape. Then the election staffers would take that box into a back room. They'd undo the tape, dump the box out, count the ballots. And what they'll do is they'll sort the ballots into like who voted, which candidate they voted for. You always vote for a local candidate at your local level. So, but they also will name the candidate. They'll name the candidate and then put the political affiliation underneath them. So, voters who may not know who their local candidate is can still find the party that they want to vote for. And so what they'll do is they'll separate into piles, and then count the piles one by one. One for whatever. And then give you that count at the end of the night and say, this many votes for this candidate, and that candidate. Once that vote is finalized, there's a returning officer who is in charge of every riding. So they report the results to the returning officer. That those result the reported process can be either submitted online or by telephone. It does depend on, you know, the infrastructure available to you in that area. But once that information is submitted, then the election authority will send it up to their election website. Um, I did briefly think about going to the Elections Manitoba website in order um, to get the results as they come in, the unofficial results they come in. But the way that this data is formatted is, it's raw data. It's also not loading. Huh. So much for that idea. Just go back to the live stream. I wonder if it's blank just because they haven't loaded anything in yet. So maybe we'll go back and see later. But um, that's the process. Now, political parties can appoint a representative to act as their eyes and ears and oversee the fairness of the vote. And so those are called scrutineers. And so, anytime you hear of some random volunteer going on news media and saying, "Well, I saw this at this polling station," usually that's a scrutineer. They're people appointed by the party that go to the polling station representing that party's interests when it comes to disputes. Now, they're not lawyers; they're not legal. It's not a legal position. It's usually by volunteer, and all they do is they're given the rules that the elections authority are supposed to be following, and they just scrutinize that balloting process and the count to make sure that it was followed correctly. They're not there to intervene in any way. All they can do is go to the election authority and register a complaint. Then the fun stuff happens, because if the complaint is quite egregious, you'll hear that there are sometimes these emergency applications during elections. Now, they're pretty rare in Canada because we just don't have a lot of controversy when it comes to running our elections. Sometimes you'll get emergency orders to keep a polling station open longer because of some sort of unforeseen issue, perhaps terrible weather. So there were some pretty big thunderstorms that moved through Manitoba today. Power was lost in a couple of areas. And so one example of that emergency application would be to request the polling station be open longer to account for that inability to vote in the morning, which matters for people because sometimes they go vote before they go into work. Especially for people who have mobility issues, if the station is not able to accommodate you when you want it to vote, it can be a major hassle to come back and vote later. So what we're going to and I haven't heard of any of those applications being filed. Again, if the reason is compelling, then they're usually not denied, and they're usually not opposed by anyone, because it's the chance to let more people cast their votes. So, again, that tends to be not very controversial up here. You definitely can get emergency applications for injunctions. So if there is something improper going on at a polling station, if anyone's breaking the law, get these emergency injunctions that will allow the police to remove the person from the station. Because otherwise, it's really difficult to take the right to vote away from someone. If they're being pretty obviously disruptive, they can be asked to leave. But they would they might ask for accommodation to be allowed to vote. Like maybe you bring the ballot outside or something. I don't know. I wouldn't know a particular case, a specific example of that in particular. But for example, if there's like a political candidate who's being disruptive at a polling station, they can get that emergency injunction and have that candidate removed, and that they wouldn't be able to come back with the oh, you violated my free speech rights. Well, yes, we did, but it was through due process. We had to make it. We actually had to make an application in front of a judge, and you can fight that at a later hearing. Prevail, then there will be compensation for you. Oh, they're starting to call some results. I'm gonna check in here.
At 8:18 p.m. Let's take a look at what's happening in the constituency of St. Boniface. This, of course, is a key riding because we have Dougald Lamont, the leader of the Liberal Party, fighting to maintain this seat, but he's got a tough competitor in Robert Loisel.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn that down so I can talk over it without being too much competition over volume. Oh, I think it's cutting in and out here.
It used to be owned by, or used to be
there we go.
represented by Greg Selinger for many years, since 1999, before Lamont won it in a by-election. So the NDP won it back, and it looks like with that first poll reporting that they're succeeding so far.
Let's now go to Rossmere, another riding we're watching, where Tracy Schmidt is out ahead of Andrew Micklefield, the incumbent, but only 2 of 24 polls reporting.
So,
and Andrew Micklefield,
when they look at this number up here, ridings are divided into polls. And it's just a logical way of dividing. Each riding has, thousands and thousands of people in it, and if you sent them all to one place to vote, it'd be chaos. So, you divide it logically, usually by like local neighborhoods. So especially in an urban setting, polling stations tend to be places where the community gathers. Schools are popular, churches are common. So yeah, those polling stations will then accept a certain number of polls, and each box at that polling station represents one poll. And so that's what this number means up here. It means that they have counted 2 of the 27 boxes that exist in one riding. Of course, again, there are 57 ridings in Manitoba. So you can see it is a huge effort. We had a Liberal jump out to a lead here, so they're on the board. That's great.
Lost this by just a narrow margin during the by-election, so it's a rematch, and so far with just 2 polls reporting, it looks like he's leading.
Again, these are very early votes. We're seeing that we have 40 seats yet to hear from. In River Heights, John Gerard, a Liberal stalwart, in the lead, 15 votes separating him and his NDP challenger.
Yeah, it's a seat that Liberals absolutely have to hold on to. A lead of 15 is very worrisome if you're a Liberal.
Oh, the Green Party registered out in Brandon. Interesting.
What's really shocking is Mike Morose has really put on a strong campaign for the NDP. I grew up in this ride.
Look at those smiles. Look at that slate. My goodness. I mean, that's your average. Look, if I asked an AI to generate 3 politicians, this is what it would come back with. These are the most average politician people I've ever seen. So, anyways, that's early voting. When you get results this early, especially from tabulation machines, and I'm seeing like 3 votes translating to a few hundred, like that Fort White there at 700 votes cast in 3 ballots. It sounds like those are the results coming from advance polls. 200,000 people voted advance across the province. So they had a record turnout. And so I'm thinking some of these early results are coming from those machines. Now, because of electronic tabulation, they have what's called Vote Anywhere. Meaning that in advance polls, even if you weren't in the place that you normally lived, like you travel for work or you were away on vacation in another part of the province, you could go and wow, those earrings. you could go and still cast your vote, and it would count back in your home riding. And so, some of the ballot boxes up in the Interlakes region, which is very popular for hunters and anglers, if they voted up there, some of those are getting counted, and they only send like 3 or 4 votes down to Winnipeg seats. Meanwhile, down in the cities, like Brandon, Winnipeg, Dauphin. I don't think Dauphins big city, but in those more urban areas, you'll see votes spread out by the hundreds, and so those are some of those early results coming back. Um, the conventional wisdom is that voters on the progressive side of the spectrum tend to turn out higher in early and mail-in voting. Now, mail-in voting is not going to move very much on the scale of things here. Like, where we're out of the pandemic, very few people still do mail-in ballot. Most of it is done in person, and so you're not going to see mail-in ballots move anything. But conventional wisdom is that the progressive side of the aisle votes and they turn out in advance polls. If that's the case, that's showing you, and you're seeing that the NDP jumped out to a big lead here, which is now starting to shrink. But you can see that they had a big momentum push early going because those advance polls are starting to get counted. So you would naturally expect to see that the results favor the NDP big time. Like, look at the lead here, and well, that looks like a northern riding for Gary. So that's a place that's expected to go NDP. But again, you're seeing with that great big lead, it would indicate to me, and I don't know this for sure, but it would indicate to me that the advance ballots are the ones being counted first. So let's check back in.
A constant scroll. So if you're wondering about a particular constituency, your constituency perhaps, just stay with us. Every 7 minutes, we'll go through the entire province, all 57 constituencies. So you will see your riding come up soon as the results come in. Marjorie Dalhouse is standing by. She's taking a look at trends and what these numbers mean.
Thank you very much, Janet. Well, here is a current look at how Winnipeg looks right now as the votes are coming in. You can see some orange, some red. Again, these are where the parties are either leading or elected. I'm going to zoom out here to Manitoba and give you a picture of what it looks like right now.
Yeah, so Fort Garry, I think, is one of these two.
Leading and elected in the north. We see some blue in the south. But let's look a little bit closer at the numbers and the vote share here. So here's the share of the votes right now. And this is for Manitoba, overall for Manitoba. The NDP off to a strong start with over 46% of the votes right now. The Progressive Conservatives...
The Liberals are big.
In the double digits there, you can see just...
Remember, they were polling at 9, so they're taking 15% of the early share. Of course, it's really early. Really, really early. But if that red bar bit into this blue bar, then the orange bar is a clear winner of the night. But this is not where it's not going to end here. What this is showing me, though, is that I think I was correct in my assessment that the early vote, the advance vote, was counted first. And you're seeing the underrepresentation of the blue and the overrepresentation of the reds and oranges. Now, this is just the seat change. This isn't the vote share they're showing on the screen right now. But, yeah, Conservatives tend to come out on vote day. They tend to vote the day of the election. And so, when you're watching Canadian elections, the order that they count the vote is important. It looks like they're counting advance votes early, which means that the NDP is going to jump out to the lead in many places. But then they have to hold off the Conservative advance as the ballot box vote starts catching up. And so, yeah, they're just going through some select profiles. Like, these are kind of high-profile figures in terms of, the local candidates in each of the ridings. I don't think we're going to focus too much on that. I will point out the party leaders when they come up. If you don't remember, Dougal Lamond, I think is how you say his name. Yeah, he's the leader of the Liberal Party, and that was the first kind of contest that they were showing. Heather Stephenson is the leader of the PC Party and the current incumbent premier, and Wab Kinew is the NDP leader. And just before I started the live stream, wow, good good result there. As I that looks like I think that might be a Manitoba, Winnipeg, riding for right. Anyways, as I was alluding to in I lost my train of thought, but it'll come back to me. Don't worry. Oh yeah, the incumbent premier is EC leader Heather Stephenson, right? Wab Kinew and big results coming in now. Like three polls reporting there's 2,000 votes on a table here. So again, very strong indication these are early. These were the advance vote, just because the advance vote was so high. I said during the debate, every time Wab Kinew introduces himself, he says, "How do you do? I'm Wab Kinew." Because and it's spelt Kinew. It's not the same as the word canoe that the boat, but the paddling canoe. But that I said at the time in the debate that his introduction actually would work on people. Like that's what we're dealing with when we deal with the average voter is catchy little one-liners and phrases. That's what it takes to win them over. So it's amazing. It's incredible. Yeah, there's no need to. They're just talking to some. I think these are guests of the media station there, so there might be some pretty. There might be voters, right? Just kind of a focus group that they talk to get some feedback on what's going on. Um, if you're wondering what issues were top of everyone's mind, it looked like healthcare was like the number one issue by a country mile. Second seemed to be the economy / affordability. And then kind of law and order and justice, but also like racism and uh, you know indigenous sort of prejudice issues. You saw in the debate that they talked about. I went to a really long explanation about the young lady that was believed to be in a landfill that the government is refusing to pay millions of dollars to go dig up. Shout out to that one person who voted Liberal in that last ticker that went by there. Yeah, I'm keeping a close eye on this ticker on the bottom right here because this just cycles through the different ridings, so the ridings that I'm keeping an eye on will come up. But the Liberals lost their lead in that River District, whatever it was called. Man, it would really suck if the Liberals get wiped off the board here. Especially because they had such a strong start with their vote share. There's Kildonan. Just saw Kildonan on the screen there. That's one of the ridings I'm keeping an eye on. When Selkirk comes up, that's another one I'm keeping. Well, but yeah, the NDP leading there. They have to win Kildonan if they're going to take government. They absolutely have to. It's one of those suburban Winnipeg ridings that tends to flip back and forth between the government of the day. Again, we're still early. These numbers down here, like 1 of 55. Again, it's so early. So the leads that you get when you only have 1 of 55 polls reporting or 1 of 18 polls reporting is meaningless. Means nothing. What I can extrapolate from it though is I can speculate on which of that ballot has been counted and speculate as to where the rest of the night's going to go. And so, again, you see the NDP jump out to this huge lead as that advance vote starts coming in. Is that lead going to hold up across through the night? Remains to be seen. Certainly, the pollsters believe it will. They believe that the lead will jump out. They'll jump out to such a far and strong lead that the Conservatives won't be able to catch them with the same day, with the election day vote. So, not much to update on. We'll have another look at the map there. I think they're gonna pull up Winnipeg in just a second. Again, these those far north rural areas, very, very few people live there, and that's why the ridings are as enormous as they are. And then possible majority. And too early to call it, guys. Too early to call it. But anyways, whenever you go back to the map, I'll kind of show a little bit more about the geography. But like southern Manitoba is a lot of farmland. Yeah, okay. Oh, never mind. We lost the map. Anyways, and the Liberals got their lead back. Good job. Oh no, it's a new result in Heindel Park. Interesting. But again, early, that I doubt that'll hold. They did a profile on this Liberal person here, Robert Ouellette. He's run for mayor of Winnipeg a couple of times. I think he's a former member of parliament. So a federal MP. I guess he jumped into provincial politics, which is weird. Usually you see they go the other way. They go from provincial into federal. But, I've seen it come the other way a couple of times. But anyways, yeah, nothing is surprising. Nothing has been quite shocking to see so far. I think is going exactly the way a lot of people expected it to go. Yeah, no, pretty good lead there. That's a pretty good lead. I think you can almost call that one. You see now that this is one of the most counted ridings they have so far. So you got 9 of 23. Get a 900 vote lead. So I think that one is probably done. They might wait a little bit to call it just because it's still early, but you're going to start seeing that they're going to finalize. Here we go. Fort Garry, right? They're going to finalize the results. So they're going to put that check mark in and say, yeah, we've seen enough. The math, you've mathematically eliminated the other contenders. So they don't think there's enough vote out there waiting. Especially when Elections Manitoba will release how many people have voted through the day. So you get an idea of how many votes there are to count in each riding. Yep, there's our first confirmed elected person. Which, it's one of those northern ridings. And again, not a result that was unexpected. So, we'll just, this is what the night's going to be like. Say hi to Chad if you're hanging out. I do expect that we'll get a result tonight. This isn't going to be like the 2016 U.S. presidential election where you had to wait until I think it was like 2:30 or 3 in the morning for a result. Or what was it that yeah, anyways, we're not gonna have to wait too long to get the final results, the prediction from them. We can check in and see what they're talking about.
Province that don't have those machines, so we'll have to keep in mind that maybe there's some slower counts coming our way. I know there are reports of some delays in some voting stations, so things are coming through very quickly right now with the technology, but there might be a hold up in some pockets of the province.
Let's go to NDP headquarters where our Ian Fraze is standing by. Ian.
There's a lot of cheering in this room. There's pop music playing in the background. They're watching you guys break down each riding, and a lot of cheers in this room. Someone else quite happy about what he's seen so far is Gord McIntosh, a former cabinet minister.
All right. Well, we don't need to watch those interviews. The other thing I want to talk about is the role of third parties in our elections. It's kind of going to be a bit of a dip into the legal side of things. Canada has laws in place to prevent corporate and union donations from going to political parties, but there are these things called third-party advertisers. In the U.S., you might be more familiar with the name PAC, or Political Action Committee. We don't really use that term up here. I've heard it spoken once or twice before, but we just use TPA, or third-party advertiser. And the unions tend to be the largest, most well-known third-party advertiser. They tend to dominate the airwaves. And so corporate and union donations directly to political parties is illegal, but you can send union money to these third parties. They, of course, are governed by the Elections Act and how much money they can spend, and there's provisions preventing collusion between these third parties and political parties. There's supposed to be a separation between them. These third parties tend to advertise on the issues. So the public sector unions, I mentioned healthcare is such a big issue, such a dominating issue here in across the country, but definitely in this Manitoba race. So, of course, the public sector union representing nurses took to the airwaves quite a bit, purchased a lot of advertising that would be shown during local television stations. There is a blackout period, so you're not allowed to show those ads on the day of the election. But well, that applies to the federal, so that's a federal rule. I don't know what the provincial rule here is. I would be surprised if there was a blackout, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't. But yes, and of course the rules and the regulations of the third parties are governed by the Manitoba elections legislation. So, third parties. It's interesting because third parties, like I said, they're usually issue based, but they have such they are the most biased organizations you can think of. They tend to favor a candidate or a party just so far and above others. Most union-friendly third-party advertisers are anti-conservative. They'll attack conservatives quite extensively. We saw this in Ontario, where the public sector union went after Premier Doug Ford during his re-election campaign, and they went after him really hard. Of course, we have the truth in advertising laws here. That's the same thing as expected of political advertisements, but there's no law against spinning or intentionally omitting information. And so when you have those tools at your disposal, you can turn just about anything and make it favorable to you and unfavorable to your opponent. And those political advertising tends to be exactly that, where they'll take an issue that they think the voters care about, and they'll go and find ways to attack the opponent. You'll find a lot of examples. Now, Greenpeace, I don't think, is one of the third-party advertisers, and if they do, they don't have a lot of purchasing power. But there are things like the Dogwood Initiative, pro-environmental groups that will often, again, attack conservatives because the conservatives prioritize the economy. Liberty groups tend to be, liberty and economic think tanks tend to be very conservative, and so they'll go after, the NDP. The Fraser Institute is probably one of the leading conservative-leaning economic think tanks here. They have such a strong bias towards a bias in favor of conservatives and a bias against NDP and liberal groups. But they focus on economic issues, which tend to be like managing the economy well, low unemployment, all healthy economic indicators. You'll find like the Canadian Taxpayer Federation. They tend to believe strongly in conservative or right leaning parties. Their big issue is always debt, government debt. They even have like up here in Canada, they have a what is it? Turning Point USA, I think, is the campus reform. There's all of these these Republican groups that go onto college campuses and recruit young Republicans. We have those up here in Canada too, right? We have groups that go onto college campuses and represent the main political parties. And then there are these again third parties that are quite active and prolific on campuses. Canadian Taxpayer Federation is one of them. They have a kind of a subsidiary that's called Generation Screwed, which is a reference to the idea that out of control government spending is going to doom our future and our kids' futures. And so the next generation are screwed. What you just saw flash across the screen there, and I missed it, but that was an update on Boniface. This is Kildonan again. This one's really, 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 really close. You can see that all of the advance vote has been made up, if that indeed was what was counted first. And so now this is just a contest of the undecideds. Which way did they go? Traditionally, if you're counting the people who voted on election day, in a bellwether riding, the skew is always going to match the end result of the election. So if we see the Conservatives take the lead and actually never relinquish it in Kildonan, that's going to tell me that the PCs might be staging an upset. So again, these are races that the NDP must win. They can't cough these ridings up. And again, they're just cycling through some more well-known public figures. But man, I wish I would have brought some. Although I do have something. I'm just gonna mute because I brought a snack and I'm just gonna grab something to eat really quick because I'm starting to get a bit of a dry mouth from talking. I'm gonna unmute the stream, but I'm gonna mute my mic so you can listen in, see what they're talking about.
Issues, and we think about issues at the door. Should that trajectory continue tonight, Aaron Selby? Why do you think we would see your party get into that kind of a position of success?
Manitobans were really clear that healthcare was their number one issue. We spoke to that, and they also know that we're the ones that they can trust to heal it.
Shannon Martin, when you're watching tonight, we still obviously are early in the evening, but the issues that you were hearing at the door that you still at this point are thinking, no, we're gonna push to the end. We're gonna see some more PC success tonight because of this. What are those issues you're thinking about?
I think the two issues that haven't mentioned, affordability and crime, and I think those two issues are still going to be reflected in a large number of these polls. Again, when you only have one or two polls reporting, it's really difficult to extrapolate what's going through people's minds.
What about healthcare? What did you hear at the door in this campaign from your PC point of view about healthcare?
You know, like anyone else, people want to make sure that healthcare is there when they need it. There's a significant delays as a result of COVID that people wanted to see the system built back up. I think we're on a path there, and we'll see what Manitobans ultimately have to say.
Hannah, you're watching the one Liberal on the board. Obviously, I know you had some reaction when we're watching John Gerard behind in River Heights. You've known him for a very long time. What are your personal feelings as you're watching these results? And then maybe we'll talk about why you think they're happening.
Yeah, both John and Cindy, I am shocked to see that it would even be this close in either one of those ridings. We consider those, I think most Manitobans consider those quite safe Liberal seats. There is the Lamoureux machine in the north end.
Even though she's the one on the board, still watching that. But Dougal is not on the board. He's behind. And Gerard is behind.
Yeah. And I think that just goes to show how much the NDP has really focused on knocking the Liberals out of this province, out of this race altogether. That was one of the first things, actually the first thing they did when the writ dropped, was come after the other progressive party in this province and try to knock us out. It's the last thing Wob said in the debate was, don't vote Liberal. So I think those efforts hopefully will be fruitless, but I think just the fact that these races are so close at that point show that was a
fair criticism. Did your party go too hard at the strategic voting and just...
Our party went with the message that people were talking about. People in Manitoba were worried about healthcare. It was the number one issue. That's what our party spoke to.
What ridings are surprising you tonight, Shannon Martin, as you're watching early results? Now we are seeing the numbers tick up a little bit. 26 leading or elected for NDP, 17 for your party. But which are there boards that came up there that you're thinking you didn't expect to see?
You know what, I would have expected, at least early on. I mean, Janice Morley-Lecomte and her riding in South Winnipeg is a riding that I'm expecting. She has worked tremendously hard. She is just a quiet personality that's been out there daily door knocking. So I'd be very surprised if these early results don't turn around for her.
I want to ask you both this briefly, and we can elaborate it on later in the night when we're deeper into the results. But I want to ask you, both of you have both been part, for your parties, for the NDP and PC that is, part of change elections, where sort of there are big swings, big messages sent. Did you get...
Yeah. I always love hearing what... So, of course, this is pretty common. You've seen this in U.S. elections, too. They'll bring on, like, one Republican, one Democrat, and then maybe, like, a outsider, maybe a Libertarian or a Green Party, or maybe the independent voter. Hey, Sharon, what's up? Hanging out with me today? Watching democracy at work. Oh, you're starting from the beginning. Oh, no, Sharon, don't do that. Here, I don't know if you can hear me because you're not live, but just boring explanation. See, I get distracted by the chat. It's without fail. I always get distracted by the chat. But I just want to draw your attention to what's going on down here at the count, because the PCs are really storming in here. There's still 12 seats out, but ooh, boy, are they again, the result is not, I cannot conclusively say that the result is decided yet. It's still really early in a lot of these swing seats, and so I can't really start extrapolating too much. The PCs are winning both Brandon seats. Those are seats they need. So Brandon is the city that's way out here on the southwest side. While we're looking at the map, I want to explain something really quickly. This area in the middle here, there's two giant lakes, right? Lake Winnipeg, and that's called the Interlakes region. So Winnipeg is down here, right? And the Trans-Canada Highway goes through that southern part. Okay, they're doing the update and the vote change. And, ooh, boy. Boy, oh boy. So, they're headed for 50% of the vote. Again, I'm still of the opinion that that is a reflection of the oversampling of the early ballot. But the fact that it's over 50 is pretty intense. It's hugely intense so far. Of course, the NDP are off only 4 away. Now, this is leading and elected, so they can still, like, these numbers change quite often through the night. But they're still 4 away right? So they're 4 of 12. They got to get 4 of those 12 out still to count. But I'm going back to the geography of Manitoba. The Interlake region is kind of like a separation boundary from northern Manitoba to southern Manitoba. All the cities, and this is true for most of Canada, most of the population is down here in the south end of Manitoba, right? The Trans-Canada kind of waves through that southern half there. Southern Manitoba is mostly farmland. It's very good farming. They've the NDP leader won his own riding, which is not surprising in one bit. You run your party leaders in their most reliable seats, unless you're like the third party, right? But yeah, if you're if you're one of the main kind of competitive parties in the election, you'll make sure that your leader runs in a very, very safe seat, because it is a huge embarrassment to actually win the election, but then your leader loses their seat. And I'm sure you're curious as to what happens if that happens, because I've said that the leader of the executive is also a member of our legislature, which is very much unlike the U.S., right? The heads of the departments in the U.S., the heads of, the executive council, the president, which is the head of the executive, they do not sit in any legislature, any house of Congress, because they don't vote on legislation. That's the separation of the executive and legislative branches of power. In Canada, that can also happen, but it is extremely uncommon. It is very uncommon to have a I can't think of any they're doing a poll or whatever. Yeah, not it. I can't think of any specific example. I think it's happened maybe once, and it was like some weird technical or legal thing that occurred that made it happen. But the way our elections work, the premier is not selected by the people. They're actually selected by the party. The leader of the party goes on to be premier. But you also vote for the premier in their capacity as a legislator. So you vote for them in their local riding. So it is possible that the party leader gets defeated in their own riding, which means that they don't get to go and vote in the legislature. But they still head up the executive council. And so they still have retained their executive function. Again, I can't think of a time where that's happened, and so I wouldn't know what the consequences of that are. I can think of a couple of times where a person was elected the leader of a party, and they didn't have a seat in the legislature, but they weren't the premier. And so that didn't have a huge impact on running the province. But the ramifications, and it's happened because, there are changes in leaders. And sometimes this happened in Alberta when Jason Kenney took control of the Progressive Conservative Party in Alberta. He didn't have a seat in the Alberta legislature, so he was running the party, but he couldn't sit in the legislative house. We've already seen that result from Fort Garry. Your ability to be able to make political speeches, to control the direction of your party, the narrative of what's going on in the House, is severely hampered. There's the incumbent premier, Heather Stephenson. Barely leading her own riding. Watch out. But only 2 polls reported, and so I think that might have been one of the areas actually affected by the power outage I was alluding to earlier. So, anyways, back to the... I get distracted so easily. It's so bad. But back to the explanation of the branches of executive and legislative. Not having a seat in the House, just the way that our parties work, the way that we make speeches, the way that politicians get attention from the media, It's through the speeches they make when they're in debate. Of course, we know that the role, the function of the houses, the legislative houses, are to debate and pass laws and bills. So it's through those debates where party leaders kind of set themselves apart from the rest. You'll find, and anytime you're watching media and you see Justin Trudeau sitting in our legislature, he's sitting in those green benches and there's a whole bunch of people behind him that are all like clapping like seals for him. It's because of a speech he made in the course of his role as a legislator in Parliament. Then, of course, you go, Pierre Poilievre gets much of the same attention, too. He's the leader of the opposition, right? Or the minority leader is what you would refer to it in the American parlance. But a lot of his media attention comes from the things he says when he's debating bills in the legislature. Now, of course, these being the leader of the executive means that you get to make other media appearances, and so being a member of the executive cabinet, all of them are legislators in Canada too. So not only do they vote in our parliament on bills or vote in our houses on bills, but then they also go and make announcements on their portfolios as in their functions as a minister. I did want to hear what this guy sounds like.
Trans youth, because I literally work with them every day. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much.
You would swear that there was like a gold bar or something on the ceiling of that building because he's just like just. Anyways, that guy just looked. He was kind of entertaining watching him talk. I had to hear what his voice sounded like, and it sounded exactly like I thought it would sound like. So, there's some anxious faces there. I can see people looking a little nervous in the crowd. But yeah, we're still keeping an eye on the results. We still 8 seats to go. No one's hit that 29 majority just yet. Still early, long way to go tonight, so we'll check in again. These interviews, they're not interesting, right? If you want an insight into what a voter is thinking about, just empty your head, because the voters who are well informed are the ones that appear at these places. That represents such a tiny minority of all voters. Most of Canada has turnout problems too. We haven't seen anyone address that yet, but it looks like the turnout might be headed to like maybe 60, mid-60s. Ooh, that's a good rate. Let's check in on this.
Over Ron Kostyshin of 30 votes.
And this was one of the ridings that the NDP really wanted to take. But we saw Heather Stephenson spending time in the final days of the campaign up in Dauphin to try to hold that for the PCs.
And look what those 30 votes mean. The NDP is sitting at 28 leading and elected right now, one shy of a majority government. In Interlake Gimli, Derek Johnson, a sizable, a comfortable lead over his NDP challenger.
Yeah, many people are seeing this as a constituency to watch, as maybe one of the bellwethers, but clearly it looks like the PCs are going to hold it with 591. That's a large margin, but there's still.
Interesting. Let me dig into that a little bit more. I did not have Interlake Gimli as one of my bellwether ridings. Let's see. There it is. So it was incumbent PC, and it was rated as a top. Oh, wow. Okay, so that is not bearing fruit. The NDP is way behind in the voting result there. Interesting. See if they've got some. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So I can actually do this now, and I don't need to listen to those blowhards. So yeah, Interlake Gimli's down here. again, you notice that this is the blue, slash the map right in half like that. The blue south of it is all like this is all farm, rural, heartland. Think Montana. This is the Montana or the Nebraska of Canada, right? Tons of farmland here. As you cross this huge area here, these are the lakes, right? So this boundary is the Lake Winnipeg. Anyways, once you cross up here, you're in what's called the Canadian Shield, which is a dense, the dense boreal forest. That's where a lot of our indigenous reserves are located, very isolated, far from anywhere. Yeah, very fascinating here. And now we're at a point. Let's have a look. So there's still a lot of vote out there to count. Where 17 of 44 polls have voted. Yeah. So we're at the point now where, okay, we can't just say it's just early voting. Now we've had some votes come in from the day of the election too. So, it's still early. There's still, the NDP can still make a comeback here. And the Vote Anywhere ballot is going to be pretty important. And so I strongly suspect, people who live up here might commute down to Winnipeg, maybe on the weekend to, go shopping, hit up a Costco or whatever. Or they might actually work in Winnipeg and live up here. It's a long drive. I think that's like a 2, possibly 3-hour drive to get up there. Check in on Brandon. Oh, there was a flip here. It's still pretty early in Brandon, 5 of 24. Yeah, the PCs need both those Brandon seats to stay in power. They really do. No results out of Midland yet. There's the one Liberal holdout in Tyndall Park. St. Boniface, you can see right in the center of downtown Winnipeg. That's where Dougald Lamont, the Liberal leader, is. Let's see if we can find Kildonan was the one I wanted to keep an eye on. You can see, boy, oh boy, is that ever close. There's a 30-vote separation between these two. Kildonan is the one that the NDP must drop in order to change the government. They start losing the ability to knock the PCs out of government if they lose this riding. This one has been called St. Vital, right? Massive NDP lead there. Downtown. Fort Rouge, you can see right here, that's Wab Kinu's riding. Again, stronghold, right? Right in the center, the core of Winnipeg. Urban centers, this in the U.S., they tend to be very Democrat. Here in Canada, they tend to be very NDP friendly. These are suburban Winnipeg ridings. See Tuxedo. My understanding is that this is a very wealthy part of Winnipeg, kind of like a gated community, so to speak. Fort White, say a similar deal. You can see why Conservatives are doing better in those areas than, say, the rest of the city. They're actually in danger of getting knocked out of the city. It's scary in a way. Transcona is another one. The path to victory for the NDP is through this riding. It's not much of a bellwether riding. I'd say it's more progressive than conservative. But certainly Selkirk and Kildonan are the two I wanted to keep an eye on. Those are up here. Kildonan. And where's Selkirk? I forget where Selkirk is. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Pretty decent lead for the PCs up in Selkirk. Yeah. The PCs lose government if they lose Selkirk. No bones about it. This is an area that's just so friendly to them, and if they lose it, it's a really bad day for them. But yeah, let's head back over to that live stream. See what they're talking
I'm
about.
worried about that. But there are some ones coming up that I had my fingers crossed, and here they are coming through. Riel is looking really good. St. River is looking really good. And of course, as I said, my heart's always in Southdale, which is looking fantastic right now, too.
Hannah, you brought up an interesting point earlier in the evening, because a lot of time we talk about getting the vote out and the ability to get the vote out. But you're saying you do a lot of work on TikTok, and you said on social media that there's a lot of younger voters that are also missed. Is that something that moving forward onto tonight that all parties could learn from?
Absolutely. I think that's something, these are conversations that all political parties have been looking at for the last 10 years. How do we use social media? How do we reach the youths, right? That's the question for 100 years, not just the last 10 years.
Sure.
But we have to be honest that the young people aren't answering the door. They're not.
So as an election analyst, how do we reach the youth is always been a question asked of me when I'm working. Social media is not it. Yeah, they're too spread out. They have their and the way that the algorithms in social media work, like the paid advertising, the political parties can't keep up with Pepsi and GMC, right? So they don't watch TV, they don't answer their phone, they don't answer doors because most of them don't own houses and never will own a house. It's very hard to canvass apartment blocks and multi-family units because, the security measures they put in place. Now, technically, by law, you're supposed to be allowed to enter, but the reality is that's really hard to pull off, especially because most of these places don't have on-site custodial staff. They outsource the management. Maybe they have a groundskeeper, but unless you know that person personally, it's impossible to get a hold of them just by cold calling. You can see a pretty big update. 31 leading and elected seats for the NDP. BC's dipped down to 20. So there was a pretty significant blast of NDP votes coming through across the province. They called Transcona. Okay. So, yep. They're flipping. They're getting the seats they needed. We got 5 that have no results out there yet. Oh, and Heather Stephenson is losing in her own riding in Tuxedo. Only 4 there. Still early.
Tuxedo, but during the evening I was looking at the data that we have on our side screens here, and this Tuxedo has gone back and forth. A few minutes ago Stephenson was leading by an eyelash.
And it is an eyelash. It's 33 votes separating the two of them. So,
but it would be astonishing if the NDP win this constituency, Janet. Yeah.
Let's go now to Progressive Conservative headquarters, where our Bartley Kivas is standing by. Bart.
You can actually hear their. You can hear.
Well, early, exactly that. I mean, there's some ridings we haven't had any reporting on at all. We just got reports that McPhillips isn't providing any counts yet, so we're not sure what's going on with those machines. We've got some boxes that have gone away, and we don't know where they are, so we're on with Elections Manitoba. We know this election's going to be tight, in that it's going to come down to a few votes across a few ridings, so I think we still have a little bit of time tonight.
When you see this spread, though, when you see the NDP, if this lead holds in majority territory, what do you think? What do you think about your team that was out trying to get the vote out today? What do you think of the prospects for this moving?
We got our vote out today. They didn't get as many votes out today as us, and you can tell by the difference in advance polls. So I'm very happy with where we are.
Okay, this is very interesting. Very rarely do you ever see a campaign staffer actually give this kind of info out. So there's a thing, and I love that she talked about this, there's a thing called Get Out the Vote, or GOTV, and it is how someone like me makes the majority of their money. Because identifying your vote isn't good enough. It's not even half the battle. The majority of the battle is, once you've found where your people are, it's getting them to the polling station, getting them motivated and out to vote. And that is a Herculean effort because it's you have to contact an absurd amount of people in a very small amount of time. So you will win or lose a close campaign like this on the strength of your GOTV. And she had a good point. She, again, reiterated the thing that we've known all the time. Progressive voters, the NDP, turn out in advance, but conservative voters turn out on election day. Now, there was a... well, there you go. There's a quick look at the all the ridings up in the air. What was I getting to? Yes, the... interesting. What is the... Okay, that's that might be an error in the number there. 34%, but only 64. Oh, anyways. Yeah, they goofed there. I'll go back into that in a second. But yes, the GOTV effort is what will make or break a campaign when you're that close to one another. Now the record turnout for advance vote seemed to indicate that the NDP was going to get a lot of votes and go and get out to these big early leads, and then as the night goes on, that you bite into that lead little by little, and it's going to be one of those classic like stop the count, because as the night goes on, you'll see that the PCs start biting and biting into those leads. Is it enough? I mean, it remains to be seen. Depends on how much vote is out there. But the Conservative staffer gave up the fact that we got our people out and they didn't. Now, the way they know is because when you go and canvass a voter, they usually will tell you who they're voting for, right? Oh, I hate you guys. No, go away. Get out of my door. I hate you. Oh, yeah, I love you guys. I love you. I love Heather Stavitz. I love PCs. Yeah, I'm voting for you. Then you'll get the odd person who's like, liberal? Oh, I hate Justin Trudeau. And it's like, no, wrong. Justin Trudeau isn't running in this election. But very frustrating. Anyways, very frustrating. But all that aside, people usually tell you who they're voting for. There are a couple people who will, though. It's like, oh no, it's secret. It's secret. I don't want to tell you. That's fine. Or they say, I haven't decided who I'm voting for yet. Some people don't decide until they put the pen in their hand and they mark the ballot. They just kind of like, this guy. So knowing those facts, you actually get an idea. And then, the key component of all of this is the voter file is common between all the parties. So you have your internal party data that you've collected from canvassing, from phone calling, from all of the methods you go out and collect data with. And of course, it's the election analyst's job to digest that data, turn it into something useful. Take the raw data and put it into the computer system so you can start using it and doing useful things with it. How do I... so the GOTV effort will tell you, okay, here's all the people who said they love us, and we can go back and tell them, hey, here's when to vote, where to vote, how to vote, right? You equip them with the knowledge that they go there, they can cast their vote, and they don't get turned back because they're missing. You do need ID to vote. That's the quickest way to vote in Canada, is to show government ID. There are exceptions. You can get around that ID requirements, but for most people, they show up and they give their driver's license. And then you go vote. So, Progressive Canada, apparently we actually only want, we want alive people to vote. So, woe was us. But, Heather Stavitz is still down in Tuxedo. Man, that would be the shocker of the night. Which tells me that the NDP might be headed for like a 33 or 34 vote majority if they're dropping suburban Winnipeg seats. But, anyways, back to the importance of GOTV. what that staffer was getting at, the idea that you can be tied with the other party, right? You have perfect tie in your riding or your area, but then you do a better job at getting your people to go vote. You motivated them, you reminded them, you knocked on your door and you're like, hey, today's the day to go vote. And you're like, oh, I totally forgot. Yeah, thanks. I'm going to grab my keys and go out and vote. It happens. It's happened, right? People forget. It sounded like that staffer was saying that the internal data that they have, wow, look, okay, here we go. Look at what happened here. Now we're starting to get into where the night is going. Now let's compare that to where these parties were. There we go. So 47 and 42. Well, the 42 is holding up, but the 47 is not so far. The difference, obviously, was the Liberals, who are currently at 11. And again, I said this, right? If the Liberals finish tonight staying at 11%, that bites just a big enough chunk off that this number might end up on this side of the line. Now, at 42%, the PCs are supposed to win 24 seats. See, oops. If I go back, they are behind at 20 seats. But there's still 5 seats not reporting. And so that might suggest that those remaining 5 seats might just squarely land right here in the PC column. Let's have a look at what's out there to report. Okay, well, this riding here, this great big one, is going to be an NDP seat. Midland looks like it would go Conservative. Same with Assiniboia. Right, those outer suburbs tend to be quite Conservative. That's an interesting race I want to keep an eye on. They called this one. Again, right, that's another suburban. Oh, only 2 seats. Well, we'll just put that aside for a second. But yeah, I think Midland would be pretty Conservative. Assiniboia would be pretty Conservative. Where else are we missing results? I think that's it. One. So where are the 5 seats that haven't reported yet? Oh, they just hit the map. Okay, that's why. So this was one of them. Anyways, so yeah, these 2 I think are Conservative, and that third one is probably NDP. So 33 and 23. Yeah, coughing up those Liberal seats could be huge for the NDP. That could be what saves their bacon. Let's check in. Yeah, I think St. Boniface is going to go NDP. They're not. So you heard them allude to it on the live stream. That the NDP came out and said, "Don't vote Liberal. It'll make the PCs go back in," and it seems to have scared all of the Liberal voters away. Yeah, Ouellette's not gonna. He's way behind. Tall. Where's the other? Yeah, the Liberals doing really good here, but not good enough. Yeah, so Burroughs, Tyndall Park, and St. Boniface, I think, were the Liberal strongholds, but not anymore by the looks of it. I think they're gonna cough all of those up. Still early there, but checking on that later.
324 votes in Southdale ahead of Audrey Gordon of the Progressive Conservatives.
Yeah, and that's quite a margin. And also, as the communication director of the Liberals was saying at an earlier interview this evening, that they really saw Robert Falcon Ouellette as maybe being the person to a breakthrough for the Liberals in this constituency, and it must be a disappointment for them there. But clearly, Wab Kinew's campaign beseeching Liberals to come over, having Lloyd Axler, the officially endorsing Wab Kinew, even though he said he didn't endorse him. But
there we go. We just colored in. Oh, wow, running away with that one.
And they worked together at the university, so there perhaps
that's true.
Yeah, so let's check back in on the Lake Gimli. Oh yeah, the PCs are going to grab that one. I don't know who thought that was going to be a bellwether. There's a couple of flips here. Oh, this flipping dot. Ooh, this one. Yeah, Doffin's going to be the bellwether, not Interlake Gimli. This race is real close. 72 votes. Still a lot of vote to count out there. Yes, if the NDP takes Dauphin, I think it's game over for the PCs. Pretty sizable lead in Brandon as well. The PCs need these seats. They need to flip those. Same with Tuxedo. They need to flip it back. I don't know what's going on there. Again, still early, but it's enough to make you nervous and sweat a little bit. Still really close in Kildonan. I mean, man, you flip like 4 of those and suddenly the result looks different. I mean, we're still... They can't call it yet. Well, let's see. If those 4 I just pointed out, so Tuxedo, Dauphin, Brandon, and Kildonan, if 4 of those flip, the NDP still gets their 29 majority, so they need to flip another one. This one's going back and forth. So yeah, I guess this one, I'm gonna Lagamodiere. Lagimodiere. Sure, I'll go with it. Lagimodiere. Yeah, so if they can do 5, if they flip 5, they knock the NDP out of majority. They're still going to lose the election, but they knock the NDP out of majority. And then that one Liberal seat becomes the balance of power. That's amazing. Okay, well, let's see. Still young. Yeah, because... there's still another guaranteed NDP seat out here, so they need to flip another one. 32, drop in. That's a very competitive race, too. Quite a few competitive races here. Yeah, I think the PCs giving up this riding was probably bad for them. Because, again, another one of those suburb Winnipeg ridings, so Seine River. Not good. Not looking good for the PCs, guys. You might want to start waving, get ready to wave the flag. Huh. Oh, no. Upset. What a stunning upset. That's not going to hold. Don't worry. So yeah, to knock them out of majority territory, you need to flip 4 seats, of which you can do Assiniboia, Tuxedo, Brandon, and Dauphin. Oh no, Dauphin flipped already. Oh, that's going to go back and forth all night, so you need another one out of Winnipeg. Yeah, you need a miracle in Kildonan. That knocks them out of majority. Oh, Tuxedo went back to peace. Whew, okay. Now that you're starting to count some of the E-Day vote, I think they're, that's not as scary as it once was. They're just doing... You see the numbers here, right? They went up to 33, but now they're starting to come back down, and this went up to 25. So now all of the early... This is going to go down, though, because that one up in the north, far north, is going to flip. So this will be 24, that'll be 32. But yeah, you got to flip 4 seats to get the NDP out of majority territory, and it will end up with 28, 27, and 1. That's hilarious. Or no, it'll be 28, 28. Because that would be 56. Yeah, and then 1. 57 seats. So yeah, it'd be 28, 28 with a tie, and the Liberals are the tiebreaker if this holds through for the rest of the night, and they can flip those 4.
Races right now. She's an
too early.
Candidate. She has a
too early. The first poll reported. Don't even draw attention to it because that's crazy. I think the traditional notion is that Assiniboia is probably PC, but who knows? You might get something funny happening over there. That margin in Brandon is going to be hard to overcome. Let's head over to southern Manitoba and look at Brandon. Oh, excuse me. Where's Brandon? So it was NDP leaning. The PCs are definitely overperforming what the 338 had them at. They're definitely overperforming. And you'll notice it, yeah, there, Cinneboy just flipped. Okay. Yeah, I mean, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't know. That's hard. That's gonna be a hard comeback to mount. What is the... Oh, they're not putting percentages, but 600 is a percent of... Actually, they're not wholly overperforming. See, though, if you do the vote totals up here, like only 7,500 votes separate these two parties across the entire province. Still only at a 22% turnout, so we still got a long way to go. Ah, okay, cool. I'm glad I found these numbers. So, remember how I said there was a vote anywhere system? So you could vote for your home riding of Brandon East anywhere else in the rest of the province of Manitoba. And so that's what this number represents, these 56. And so actually, a lot of that advance vote has not been counted. No, wait a second. Yeah, that's a little interesting. That's weird to me. I'm not sure what to make sense of those numbers, but so yeah, 6 of the 24 stations in the riding have reported, but one of those stations is entirely made up of these 56 outside advanced stations. So, and then only 6 of those have reported. Now, the majority of the stations across Manitoba won't have any votes for Brandon, or a negligible amount of votes. I'm wondering if the 6 down the columns here kind of represents that they counted the advance in the riding, because of course there would have been a machine. Well, no, that one machine would be here. Right, because there are 57 ridings, and so the outside ridings with advanced machines would be 56. There's one, then there's a couple in the riding itself. Most ridings have like 3 or 4 advanced polling stations. So yeah, it looks like they've counted. Where those 6 come from? Those might be City of Winnipeg advance votes, which would be the majority of where the advance votes would come from, but hard to say, really. Anyways, very, very interesting that I was able to find those numbers. Again, at a 10% turnout, that we're still pretty early here, and there's a lot of ground. A lot of votes are still out there, not a lot of ground to cover, so way too early to call that one. See if there was any move else in the... Yeah, see, now that we're getting into the 25% turnout, once you get over the 50% line, that's when you can safely say that you understand how many votes are counted and out there, and how many have come back, and you can get a sense of where that riding's going to go. Oh man. So look at the vote split between the Liberals and the NDP here. You add those two together, and they easily would have knocked Stephenson right out of the riding. One's still pretty close. It's not over yet. there, but now you see we're ticking up to 32%. Still way too early there. And no movement there. Okay. So now you're starting to see the slowdown. Again, just running away with that one. Starting to see the slowdown of the results. Did they call? Now they haven't called St. Boniface yet, but see them making up the ground there. It's a pretty wide margin. Especially when you're fighting over the same voter. Over. There's a lot of close races.
Leading an elected NDP and 26 for the Progressive Conservatives. Now a jump of 2 that went to the NDP. NDP now leading and elected in 32 constituencies. Let's go to St. Boniface. That is one of them. That's one of the reasons we saw that number jump. Robert Blazel actually has been leading, I believe, all night.
Yeah.
He's from a family of teachers in St. Boniface, very well respected.
Yeah, and he's run a very strong campaign, and the NDP had held this riding right through the Schreier years and the Howard Pauley years, with Larry Desjardins, and now and with since 1999 under Premier. My brain is going tired at the end of the evening. But Greg Salinger had this for many years. Pardon me, Janet. So anyway, the NDP want this back, and Dougald Lamont must be very disappointed with these numbers tonight.
Let's go now to Tyndall Park, where our CBC election desk projects Cindy Lamoureux will keep that seat. She'll hold it.
That's big.
For the Manitoba Liberal Party.
Well, that's a great relief for.
That's big. Because the Liberals have at least one seat, which means that if a tie happens, they hold the balance of power. You know what they say, big if true, right? True if big. So, absolutely, now we get, that race is pretty close. Let's check in. River Heights.
I believe. And he is currently behind the new Democratic Party candidate, Mike Moraz, a 289 vote lead.
289 votes, but there's only 5 polls left to report. Let's go take a look at River Heights and see what we can see.
The PCs will move over to John Gerard to hold up John Gerard against the Mike Moreau's threat, because they were very strong with their sign campaigns, and a lot of people took note that the NDP might win River Heights. I'm astonished if they do keep this lead. It's still a small lead, and we've only got so many polls reporting, but if Mike Moreau's holds on, this will buck the trend of what we've seen in River Heights since River Heights was had houses built on it.
Let's look live at Liberal Party headquarters.
Across Manitoba.
Oh, looks like a concession speech.
Decided, and sometimes you get caught in a wave, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do. There's an old saying from Ecclesiastes, which I quoted the last time, after the last election, that I saw under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle of the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. And I will say, I always knew this was a possibility, but we had to hope beyond hope and keep working and do everything we could to run the best possible campaign we could, and we did. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I want to share a message I got. Thank you. And I'll share a message I got from a friend today. It said, "Our family voted Liberal today. You've been amazing throughout the campaign, providing integrity, practicality, and a genuinely strong moral compass." And I can tell you what my exact reaction was. It was, "That's really nice, but that's the kind of campaign that doesn't win in Manitoba." I've worked a lot of hard campaigns. This was one of the hardest but I have to say it was also one of the very best. For the stands we took, for the fact that we stayed true to our principles at every moment, that we handled ourselves and our opponents with respect. And I do think that people did respond to our vision and our candidates and to our record. And ultimately, the Manitoba Liberals are a grassroots party. Every single one of our campaigns is held together with baling wire and twine, sheer will, and a lot of faith. And we used every single scrap of baling wire and every inch of twine in putting together this campaign. I know we changed hearts and minds in this election, but I also know that's not always enough. And you know, I've sometimes joked there's a St. Jude who's the patron saint of nursing and the patron saint of the impossible and the patron saint of hopeless causes. And what defines a hopeless cause is not that it can't get better. It's that you have to dedicate yourself to it whether there's hope on the day or not. And the other is that when you truly believe in a cause, as we do, it means you keep working on it. Because the work is what creates hope. As MLAs and as candidates and as a party, we've helped people who've given up hope because the other parties gave up on them. And that's why our voices mattered. It's why our contributions over the years mattered. And why I am truly sad today to be losing, but the people have spoken. I'll congratulate Robert Lozelle. I congratulate Rob Canoe. And that's it. Thank you. Merci.
A sad moment for Liberal supporters in this province. Dougald Lamont, a very respected man. Polls came out saying he was the one that many, many voters felt would be the most premier-like. They liked this leader the most, and yet he has just gone to the podium and introduced himself as the former leader of the Manitoba Liberals.
All right, so yes, huge results. Now when they cut to it, I missed it. Sorry about that. But yeah, he, of course, Liberal leader Dougald Lamont is stepping down. He's resigning as leader of the Liberal Party. Let's check in here really quick.
It's even more difficult when you lose 2 of the 3 seats that you held. You didn't expand to official party. You contracted. He and John Gerard are both, losing tonight, and Cindy Lamoureux being the only one standing. He ran a tough campaign, and he worked very hard.
Yeah, he did work very hard. Let's go to our panel with Marcy Marcusa. I know you've got someone there who cares deeply about Dougald Lamont, knows him quite well. Let's hear thoughts.
Well, I'll tell you what, we do. And we also on the panel have a lot of reaction to what just happened, because it's not something we've seen in Manitoba politics before, we're still watching what's going on in St. Boniface. We hear that the leader is stepping down, of course. We haven't seen this before, so the whole panel reacting to this, a leader coming out so early when we're watching results. But let's speak to what has been announced here. What's your reaction, Hannah, to your party leader moving aside at this point in the evening so early?
Honestly, I'm a little bit shocked, first of all, the timing wise.
Yeah, that is very rare. Now, I've seen it many times. I've been watching and covering elections, not on YouTube for a long time, but personally for a very, very long time. And yeah, when someone gets beaten badly, the emotion of the moment takes over, and you say, look, clearly I'm not the best person to run this party anymore. There needs to be change. And it's always a testament to, you gotta understand too, we do make, we laugh at politicians a lot, and we can lose sight of the fact that it is never easy to put your name on a ballot, to put yourself forward, and to withstand the absolute hatred and vitriol that comes back at you. It can be very sobering, but as a politician, you're often bearing witness to some of the worst that people can do and say to other human beings. And it takes a very dedicated person, a very special type of person, to be able to withstand that barrage. And so sometimes you get caught in the moment, and um, you get a moment of clarity, or perhaps you're a prisoner of the moment, but you, you step up to that podium and you say, look, thank you so much, but the buck stops with me, and I will take that, I'll take that failure and step aside. So, it is not. I wouldn't say it's rare to see on election night. It may be rare in Manitoba elections, but certainly not rare to see in elections in general. Especially if there is a pretty big change in the air. Now, do I think that Heather? I mean, obviously, Wabikanew's not going to step down if these results hold up. Yeah, he's unseated in incumbent government. He's going to win the election. So, sorry, I just had to look at something on my phone here. Get a quick message. Anyways, always distracted by the chat, whether it's the chat on YouTube or the chat on my phone. So yeah, not unheard of. Definitely in political history. But a huge deal. Now, are we going to see? Like I said, obviously, Wabikan is not going to step down if this result holds up. Heather Stephenson, on the other hand, I don't think you would see a commitment either way tonight. I think she'll take a couple of days to reflect and see what happened, what went wrong, what went well. I think we knew that there was an appetite for change in Manitoba. We saw that in all the polls. I've seen the PCs overperform so far. And so, of course, when you overperform the polling, that comes back to the leader, and that usually means that the leader's going to stick around. Usually. But sometimes the leader says, hey, we didn't get the job done, and maybe I'm not the right person to lead the party going forward. But I think when the result is this close, again, if these numbers hold, you can just see it went 33-23. But if these numbers hold, I do think you're not going to get a commitment out of Heather Stephenson tonight of her stepping down. She's never won an election as premier. She took over the PC party after the previous premier resigned to make room for his successor. That would have been Brian Pallister, who I believe actually is no, never mind. But yeah, he left. Brian Pallister left politics, so of course he cleared the way for a couple of years ago for a successor to take over and build a brand to go into the election, because you don't want to change leaders close to the election. It kind of shocks voters, it upsets them, and they will react poorly to your new chosen candidate. So, so the first casualty of the night. Yeah, we've had the one leader defeated. It looked like we were going to have a chance at defeating another leader. But it looks like that stabilized for now. Yeah, I mean, the lead's not big, but it is getting bigger as the night goes on. This one is, again, it's still holding. Assiniboia flip, but still early. This hasn't gone back yet, but again, I expect it to go NDP. Still close and often. Wow, the Brendan West flip was unexpected. See if we can dig in to see why that happened. I saw this on the screen before, and I didn't bring attention to it because I had to cut to the Liberal leader doing his resignation speech. But a lot of the advance got dumped in. And so again, when you see advance dumps come into the numbers, that tends to bump the NDP up. And of course, there's a lot of these election day boxes still being counted. And that's going to favor traditionally PCs. Just as an average, of course, individual ridings matter. So in a place like, in St. Boniface, um, these boxes are Liberal and NDP voters. They're not PC, even though it is election day ballots, right? Stands to reason. That gap closed in real good. They're now down to they're separated by 4,400 votes. Oof. Oh boy. This could be an interesting night tonight. Check in on some of these areas here. Yeah, I don't think they're going to catch him in Kirkfield, so you can't. I mean, the road is narrowing quickly on the PCs getting that tie. With Kirkfield out of the equation, they basically need to run the board in Assiniboia, Lajamodière, Kildonan, and now they need to flip both Brandon seats. Again, it's still close, still a lot of vote out there. Now, someone like me, I'll talk a little bit about kind of, hiring someone like me to do this type of work for a politician. One of the reasons that you want to have someone like me who's familiar with a local region is because I can tell you, I can actually open up these writings and tell you, I don't know, no, it doesn't. Yeah, it's not going to break down the exact which neighborhoods those votes have come out of, but yeah, I could actually zoom into these ridings and say like, oh yeah, this part of the riding hasn't been counted yet, and that's typically very conservative. So I would expect the vote to increase from that. Those of us who do election data analytics know that those intricate ins and outs of those neighborhoods. And they could say, well, yeah, they haven't counted this school yet, and that school is in a part of the riding that's very conservative, very progressive, blah, blah, blah. And you could start getting some inferences out of that, saying, okay, we're down by 100, but they haven't counted the one polling station that's in our strong area, so I think we're going to come back and win this one. And you can tell that to the campaign manager because, my job is to keep the campaign manager informed so that they can make decisions on the campaign. That's my job at the end of the day when I'm hired to do this role for any campaign, is to give him good information, something he can use to make decisions. Now, what kind of decisions are you going to be making when the ballots are closed, when the polls are closed, and all they're doing is counting? Well, you need to decide which speech you're writing. At this point, if I'm the election analyst working for all of Manitoba for the PC party, and I'm sitting in a large conference room with a giant screen up on the showing all of these results, and then like maps and papers thrown everywhere, it can get very chaotic on election day. Let me tell you. But I've got a map and I've got a highlighter, and I'm like, okay, so votes left here and here and here. I'm telling Heather, hey, don't get your concession speech ready just yet. We're not out of this race yet because we can still have, they can still flip seats. Again, sitting at 32, it should be 33, so they need to flip 5, right? 1, 2. Boy, the math is quickly getting out of hand on them. I'll check back in the live stream in a second, but I'm almost ready to mathematically eliminate the PCs here because I'm expecting this one to flip, right? It just, there's no votes being counted out of it. So that's going to go to the NDP and give them 33, which means you need to knock them out of 5 ridings, 3 here in Winnipeg, but the only 3 that can possibly flip, I don't see any that are close enough. Oh, no. And they're, Kildonan, Assiniboia, but there's no third one here that they can flip. Oh, maybe Waverly. Okay. Yeah, so Assiniboia, Waverly, and Kildonan, and these both Brandon seats. But again, you got to run the board on that, and that's exceedingly difficult to do. So they're not mathematically eliminated, but they're getting close. Closer and closer.
Finance reform, if you had different kinds of, say, electoral reform, but the other two parties have no interest in doing that whatsoever because they really just want to keep this a duopoly.
Dougald Lamont, you've got the province of Manitoba listening right now. What would you like to say to them?
Look, Manitoba is a fantastic province with fantastic people. It has a tremendous future and lots of possibilities. I wish everyone the best. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I hope to still make a contribution in some way or another. I'm very proud of everything we've done and my candidates. We did incredible work. And it's too bad it didn't resonate, or even if it did resonate, that it didn't result in votes. At the end of the day, I think we made a positive. I don't think. I know we made a very major positive contribution to Manitoba in our time in office, and I'm very proud of that. And we'll see where we go from here.
John Gerard, long-standing member of your party, could lose his seat as well tonight. What would you like to say to him and his supporters, and about that?
Well, that's just, look, again, it's an orange wave. The fact is, John is an extraordinary person who's made incredible contributions to Manitoba as well. He's saved lives. He's done incredible work for the environment, for Indigenous people, for people with disabilities. And look, I'll say the one thing that's unfortunate is that one of the things we could do that the other parties was that we would speak up for people who would be rejected by the other parties. People would go and talk to other parties. They would be ignored. And we were the only ones who would speak up. It was easier to do that with 3 people. And but look, I mean, this is it. This is part of what happens. It's an orange wave, and sometimes there's nothing. Like we were saying, either we could win 6 seats or we'd be wiped out. And unfortunately, we were basically wiped out. So I knew that this was a possibility. Now that it's come to pass, it's not pleasant, but we all have to move on.
Dougald Lamont, I know a lot of people in this province wish you very well and thank you for the dedication you've given to our democracy. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
A round of applause for Dougald Lamont. Let's go to our Citizens Cafe.
That's exactly what we just...
Okay. Yeah, none of these none of those reactions are going to be helpful or useful at all. But yeah, I mean, you can sort of see the human emotion kind of break through a little bit when when you put your heart and soul into something and it just doesn't go the way you wanted it to. Yeah, it's it's tough to watch someone bear their sins like that, bear the results like that. To check in with I wanted to see where Brandon West was supposed to be at the end of the night. Yeah, PC likely. Okay, so Brandon West is I have a funny feeling that one's not going to stay orange very long. I think it was a big dump of advance votes once again. And so that one will probably go back. See where the night ends. Let's check in on what Assiniboia should have been. Let's check these Winnipeg suburb ridings and see where they should have been versus where they are. So Assiniboia was NDP likely. Well, definitely. Wow, way too early. But yeah, I was counting Assiniboia as possibly saving the PC party. I don't think that's going to come to pass. The toss-up here in Légimaudière. I'm still seeing the PCs overperform where versus where they should have been. Oops, I've checked Killed so many times. Let's check Waverly. Toss up with a PC incumbent. Again, basically a tie there. So And yeah, this one was a toss up, but the Liberals obviously overperformed here. It's supposed to be a straight up tie, and yet the Liberals actually ran away with it. So I don't know. I have to double check the percentages, but I don't know if the Liberals got better than expected support, or if the NDP actually collapsed their support, because those have different implications. I could explain away the higher than average result in Tyndall Park, just by saying that the Liberals are seeing losses across the board, but their vote concentrates and makes it very hard to pick and choose. Okay, no, where is that vote going to concentrate? Because when you take these opinion polls, you average them across jurisdictions. I don't know if they were averaging the whole province of Manitoba, because the Liberals don't even run candidates in many ridings. But certainly across the entire city of Winnipeg, you want to average their support. But if it condenses in pockets, it actually can be enough to change the result of the election. And we're seeing that here in Tyndall Park, or Tyndall. I don't know if that's Tyndall or Tyndall. You're seeing that here with a clear overperformance, because you can see that Cindy Lamoureux was declared the winner pretty early in the night. So she had a huge lead over the NDP. Certainly wasn't shaping up to be a tie like I said it was. So I'm actually, I don't know. I've been pointing out that there was PC overperformance versus polls. That might actually be an NDP underperformance versus polls. It's really hard to place where that Liberal vote should have been versus where it was predicted to be. You're seeing let's see here. Yeah, so they were tied at 44, but obviously the Liberals take 55% of that. So a huge collapse of the NDP vote there. Where was the 18% for the PC? Tyndall. Okay, so I'm thinking it was actually a collapse, an epic collapse of the NDP vote, because the PCs did better too, versus expected. So yeah, it actually, it might not be the PCs overperforming, but instead a, in trouble there. An underperformance of the NDP vote. And so how you explain that is a runaway. Well, that's a problem of GOTV. Because the progressive voters rely so much on advance voting, if they didn't actually go and vote, all of the ones that were ID'd, now, you got to keep in mind, they said it was a record for the number of advance votes cast, but also, our population grows year over year for the most part. So, and of course, the way voting has changed so much, and the introduction of Vote Anywhere has made it more convenient to vote in advance than on election day. So, you're seeing that push to move voters to vote advance. So it doesn't surprise me that more people are voting in advance now than at any other point in the electoral history. I'd like to see what the percentages are. The percent of turnout in advance, which would tell me kind of what the trend is. Now we got the turnout provisionally at 28%. There's a lot of votes out there still to count. 60 might have actually been a gross overestimation of the final turnout. I think at this rate, if it holds up, it might only end up being 50%, which would be really, really low for a provincial election. And it seemed like there was so much energy. And I think that the collapse of the turnout is reflective of the NDP underperformance in many of their ridings. Now, they're winning, right? They're definitely winning. But you have to start wondering how much more could they have been winning had they met their performance expectations. Definitely that one's not competitive. There's definitely still some competitive ridings left out in here. No movement on Assiniboia. It's going to be interesting to see where that ends up in the night. So, and that math is why that CBC has not called the result. Normally you get, they see enough numbers and they're like, yeah, we think we know how this is going to end. We'll just declare that this party's the winner. The reason CBC is not calling it is because the PCs have not been mathematically eliminated. And it's because of that, the difference in the performance versus the polling expected. So the actual performance versus expected performance is not fully aligned with expectations, and therefore, I mean, the ramifications of that. Oh, Dawson's still really close. Boy, that's got to be making them nervous. The ramifications of that is that you don't know what the result's going to be. A couple of these seats could change hands at the last second. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kill the webcam and my microphone really quick because I really need the bathroom. So I will turn the volume back on for the live stream here. I'll take a quick break. See you guys in a second.
An incredible experience for me to be the MLA for people in River Heights and to be able to raise issues and concerns from people, not only in River Heights but around the province, because as leader I traveled around the province a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. I know it's a difficult night for you. Thank you. That is John Gerard. I'm here at the Liberal headquarters, and back to you tonight, Janet.
Thank you so much, Caroline Bargut, John Gerard being gracious as always. Kildonan Park, let's take a look at what's happening in that riding. I apologize. Kirkfield Park, Logan Oxenham getting out to a comfortable lead over incumbent Kevin Klein. Now 579 votes separating the two.
Yeah, and this is, as we were saying before, it's a rematch of what happened in the by-election late last year. Kevin Klein won that by-election, but not by a huge margin. So Logan Oxenham was very much seen as a possibility. Kevin Klein's had a very topsy-turvy past couple of years, Janet. He ran for mayor. He had a strong showing, but he didn't win. He stepped down out of city council to run. Then he ran it in the by-election. Now he's running again. Now there's a possibility he might not succeed tonight. Then he'll have to figure out where he wants to go in his career. But it's been a very tumultuous 2 years for Kevin Klein.
That name recognition may help. J.D. Devgan of the NDP out to a 144-vote lead in McPhillips with 12 of 21 polls reporting.
Yeah, it's a very slender lead. Devgan actually is a colleague of mine. He works in government relations, actually stepped aside to run in this election. But if he continues to have a lead, and if he wins, he'll really know government relations by next term. But anyway, best wishes to him. But also, I could see the PCs a strong showing, and it's a narrow lead for Devgan, and it might flip back and forth. We still have a number of polls to show here.
We do. Let's look at what's happening in Waverley. David Payne-Kratz, an 83-vote lead, so tight over the very well-known, well-liked incumbent John Reyes of the Progressive Conservatives.
Yeah, John Reyes, a very high-profile cabinet minister in both Pallister's government as well as Stephenson, and most recently involved on immigration and labor in Manitoba. Very high profile, Janet. So this would be a real disappointment for the PCs if Payne-Kratz did pull out a victory. But as you can see, it's just a whisker of a difference of 83 votes.
And we seem to be seeing the NDP do exactly what it hoped to do tonight, convince Manitobans to vote.
No, actually, as I've pointed out several times, they're hang on, let me get the camera back in here. Yeah, as I've pointed out several times, they're actually underperforming the expected results by quite a noticeable margin. Is it going to be enough to cost them this election? I don't think so. The math definitely works in their favor, but we were looking at possibly an obliteration of the Progressive Conservative Party with this change election, and that has not come to fruition just yet. Certainly winning by 10 seats in a 57-seat legislature is meaningful. It's a sizable victory. It gives them, the 4-seat majority gives them some flexibility when it comes to implementing their will and their agenda. But absolutely the biggest issue right now for them is they appear to be having a turnout problem. And if that's enough to flip 1 or 2 seats, like let's say we end the night and the NDP ends up at 31, and it puts the PCs up at 25 and the Liberals at 1. Well, then they got to elect the speaker. And the speaker typically comes from the government side. So now they go from 31 to 30. Right? 29 is a majority. And so when you try to pass your legislation and you get a couple of MLAs, they're cabinet ministers, they have portfolios, they have announcements, they go out on the road. 2 of them end up skipping a vote and suddenly the government falls. That, oh boy. You get some interesting scenarios when you get those razor-thin margins. And imagine, too, if the Liberals hung on to their 3 seats, the NDP would be at 31 currently. So you have to think that, they're getting... It looks like they're cruising towards the result that they wanted to get, but you got to feel almost like there's a measure of disappointment. And I've seen that a lot of the counts have stalled too, which is never good. The stalling counts just mean that it's taken a long time for them to empty out the boxes, to sort them, to recount them. Of course, you get scrutineers who want to say, hey, I want to look at that ballot. I don't think that ballot was marked correctly. And then, of course, the DRO's got to come over. The deputy returning officer's got to come over and look at it. And those are all things that can hold up the count. I don't remember if they were using electronic tabulation for the in-person vote on election day. I think they were only using it for advance, which means that the advance votes counted really fast, but the the election day votes are not counted fast, and so you end up in this kind of situation where you're just kind of waiting for numbers to come in. Well, I got 7. It says I got 7 people watching right now. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. We're just hanging out here. I'm happy to take questions from the chat too. Talk about some of my knowledge of election campaign strategy, the role of an election analyst, all that fun stuff. But if you're not in the mood to chat, if you're not in the mood to watch or hang out, yeah. And hey, I'm not monetized, so I can talk about that stuff. The the stalling means the election is rigged. But like I mentioned to my American listeners, we typically don't have that kind of narrative going on in our elections here. One of the big reasons is, as I already explained, the using the tabulators versus using electronic voting. Tabulators leave a paper backup, a paper trail. So it's something you can audit. You can look and say, and the person who votes can say, like, no, I voted for, I circled this person's name. I voted that. The other common way to cheat would be ballot box stuffing. And so I explained the role of scrutineers early in the stream. And of course, scrutineers are the defense to ballot box stuffing. That's why ballot boxes typically are sealed with tamper-resistant tape. or if they don't have not every jurisdiction has tamper-resistant tapes. What they'll do is they'll just use like they'll use masking tape, but then they'll have like the volunteers like initial over it with a big marker, and so that if the tape's been ripped, the marker would bleed through the tape, and you would be able to see that because it would mark black ink on the box. So kind of a low tech way to just make sure that the box hasn't been tampered with. Of course, you're allowed to inspect the box too. So they'll the election workers will take the scrutineers into a back room where they count all the ballots. And the election workers, they don't let you touch the box, but they'll let you look at it, and they'll like open all the flaps, make sure that all the papers were taken out, make sure that there's no cuts or any like weird markings or anything inside. Also, every time a voter comes up and registers at the election desk, they mark them off a tally sheet, and the tally sheet has to match the number of ballots in the box. If those numbers don't match, then the DRO registers a discrepancy. If the discrepancy has no chance of changing the outcome, then they don't really, they don't follow up on it. They don't do like they don't check to make, they don't do anything further if the discrepancy has no chance of changing the result. They're doing a check-in in Brandon East here, so I want to go into that.
For the New Democrats, the difference between
again, so there was a big dump of advance vote, which caused these two Brandon seats to go NDP temporarily. But with the lead of 139, still 16 polls out left to report. I don't expect that number to hold up. Whether it'll get bigger or smaller really depends on what the people of Brandon want it to do. It really depends on. Did YouTube censor Northern Saxon? Great name. I think YouTube may have just like censored him and banned him because I didn't do that. That'd be hilarious. Get Susan Wojcicki. Wonder if Sharon. I wonder if you're still in the chat. If you're hanging out. I wonder if you caught up to the current hour. How long I've been going? Been going 2.5 hours. We're still pretty early in the night. I think another hour or two we might have the full results starting to shape up here. Some of the numbers have not moved in quite some time, so let's head on over to our map and see what's still out there. Yeah, this one hasn't moved. Oh, nope, nothing happened in Brandon. Not much is happening in Dauphin. Yeah, a lot of these numbers stagnated, so interesting to see. So again, if the numbers hold the way they are, we need 2 seats. The PCs need to flip 2 of these orange seats blue, and then both of the Brandon seats, or 3 here in the city of Winnipeg, and 1 of Brandon. If what's on the board holds through the night, again, I'm still suspicious that this is blue. It should be orange, and it probably will end up being orange at some point. So then that number becomes having to flip 3 in Winnipeg and 2 in Brandon. And it looks like, the polls said that Assiniboia wasn't supposed to be close, and it's still, they only have counted how many votes? Yeah, they've only counted 180 votes out of 16,000 registered voters, so I don't want to draw any inferences based on those numbers because it's just way too early. This one here, a 35 vote lead, an 83 vote lead. What just happened over here? Okay, the McPhillips flip was unexpected. Okay, so we got a big dump of numbers. So let's see where that came from. Okay, that was a big dump of advance vote. Again, the advance vote favors the NDP. You can see these numbers went up quite a lot. So, yeah, we just got a big dump of advance vote come in. Enjoy your jigsaw puzzle, Sharon. Yeah, so they flipped La Jamodier. And then let's see what happened over here in Assiniboia. Woo, yeah, big lead for the NDP there. That prediction might come to pass in that this is actually a lost hope for them. It was close because I got tricked by the low amount of votes, but I think ultimately that's just going to stay orange all night. They don't have a chance there. And it looks like Heather Stevenson's pulling away in Tuxedo too, which is good. Fort White looks like it's going to stay conservative. 51 in Waverly, 40 in Jamodier. St. John's is gone. Kildonan still at 140. Margin. This margin here, yeah, I don't think they're going to. Not there. Not there. Nope. Nope. And nope. Yeah, so the PCs are very quickly running out of... yeah, there it is. There's that northern riding flipping back over to the NDP like it should have been. Again, Gimli looks pretty safe. Often still close. And then Brandon... Oh boy. 800 votes behind in Brandon. I think that's gonna be it for the PCs. I think after that advance vote dump, you might get the result. I think I'm ready to call it as an NDP majority government. Where they ultimately end up, it could be 32 seats, 31 seats. But I think I'm ready to call it. Let's see if they call it.
Regret their vote today. Does anyone regret their votes? Okay, lots of no's. But I want to speak to a yes. So I'm coming over. If you've got a yes, let's go here. Right, Hannah. Hello, Hannah Ramsey. You said yes. Can you tell us a little bit about who you voted for and why you regret that vote?
Absolutely. I voted for the NDP today, which it was up there. I was really battling between NDP and Liberal. So I was one of the.
So you voted strategically. Yeah. You wanted to vote to Liberal. You voted NDP. So then why do you regret that?
I don't know. I think when I saw Lamont's face and it really clicked that he is a person, and I got to see in the debate that he felt like the most honest, and I was just sad to see him. So sad.
Strategic voting is a huge thing in Canadian politics because of the multi-party system. And I pointed this out in the debate too. The first thing Lamont said was, hey, you don't have to vote for the other parties. You can vote for me. And then the last thing Wab Kinew said is, hey, I'm the only one who can stop the PCs. So if you hate the Conservatives, you have to vote for me. And, of course, that comes to strategic voting. What is that person doing? What was that hand flick? Did you see that? Oh my god! Rewind that. Watch that. Watch that wrist flip. Oh man!
And our CBC decision desk has seen enough and is ready to make the call.
Knew it. Told you.
CBC is projecting an NDP majority government tonight. For Wab Kinew, it is a clear and historic victory. He will be Manitoba's first First Nations premier. As we look live at headquarters, Wab Kinew was first elected into the legislature in 2016, just 17 months later, became NDP leader, and now he's led his party to power. We see people cheering there. They are cheering for Wabonakit Kinew, a 41-year-old Anishinaabe man, father of 3 boys. His wife, Lisa Monkman, is a physician, and he has pledged to fix our ailing healthcare system. Wab Kinew is an author, a former CBC broadcaster, and he was the first director of Indigenous inclusion at the University of Winnipeg. Inclusion. Kinew has said he will be a leader for all Manitobans, and he vows to bring...
Well, so we finally get the results, and it took a big advance vote dump to get there, but yeah, because they've opened up these huge, insurmountable leads in many of those Winnipeg seats, right? 800 votes separating them. There's just not enough vote out there, so as I was coming to the realization that they got mathematically eliminated, when Assiniboia was off the table, that was the elimination. More advance vote comes in, and it just doesn't move the needle, right? Splitting 50-50, and so the PCs are behind, and they can't catch up. There's not enough vote out there to catch up. So looks like Kildonan is lost. They might end up getting Waverley back, the PCs, but that's not gonna change anything. They might also get Brandon West back again. Doesn't change anything. Looks like they lost Brandon East. That was a pretty big lead for the NDP out there. So we have our result. Let's listen to our analyst here.
Very well. And the issue of the landfill site was a wedge issue, I think. And over the past week, I don't think it worked very well in the media. So I would say there are problems with the campaign that there'll be a lot of thinking about over the next number of months.
Let's go back to Ian Frey standing by live at NDP headquarters. Ian.
Sorry, Janet, it is really hard to hear in this room. Robert Loisel, St. Boniface candidates. You've got a concession call, I understand.
Well, we spoke briefly, and Dougal congratulated me, and I thanked him for his service. I'm excited, of course, to get to work very soon for the people of St. Boniface, where I, of course, have deep roots.
Let's talk about that deep roots right now. You're well known in St. Boniface.
Well, I was born in St. Boniface, raised in St. Boniface. I teach in St. Boniface. I've raised my family there, and I spent 35 years working wholeheartedly for the people of St. Boniface. Yes.
So yeah, they're interviewing the person who beat the PC leader. You might say beat him so bad it caused him to leave politics. So, yeah, huge victory for whoever that is. Look up his name, but big victory for him. Pretty decisive victory for Wab Kinew. I'm still interested to see where they ultimately end up if the PCs are able to steal back a couple of those very close seats, just based on the election day turnout. Because, of course, the people running in those ridings, like now that they know the result of the whole province, it comes down to those ridings that have close margins, right? And so we saw that in Legemondier. We saw that Brandon West is really close. And Waverley. And so, the candidates running in those 3 seats are anxious to see if they're going to be joining Wab Kinew's government or, unmute while we look at the map here.
So this is a look at Winnipeg this evening, the way that this election is shaping up. Look at all that orange. If we compare it to 2019, let's see here. There we go. You can see that the Progressive Conservatives had seats that they won to the west, to the south, parts of the north. And again, currently what it's looking like, and we heard descriptions of this as a wave of orange. And remember, we mentioned too that the party that forms the government has to win battleground Winnipeg. Let's look at the share of the votes right now, the popular vote. The NDP, look at that, almost 45% of the vote. That is a big jump for them since 2019, where they saw just over 30%.
44.5 to 42 to 11.7.
A little bit. They had close to 47% of the vote back in 2019, and they currently stand at just under 42% of the vote. The Liberals still staying in the double digits, but they lose a little bit.
The NDP is underperforming their poll position, right?
Under 12%.
So this is supposed to be 47. This is exactly right where the PCs were supposed to end up. Here, let me not talk over her. Yeah, so you saw that the 42% is exactly where the polls said that the PCs were going to end up. The NDP is the one who lost ground. They coughed up some percentage points to the Liberals. Right, the Liberals ended up very close to 12%. And the problem, though, is that the PCs lost too much of their vote, because if the NDP underperformed, right, they're supposed to be at 47, they get knocked down to 44.5. You would think that some of that, by natural consequence, the percentage of the PC vote will start to increase. That did not happen. And so what you're seeing is that would end up being a margin that could have dropped the NDP down into the 30 and 29 range. So honestly, you start playing with the numbers. You just move the dial just a tiny little bit, and then suddenly you end up with wildly different results. And that's what the art of election forecasting, election analysts analysis is. And so my prediction that the NDP was going to win, I think a lot of people expected this result, and so it's not like I can say oh, well, I predicted the correct result. That wouldn't be a feather in my cap. My prediction of Kildonan did come to pass. I said that the NDP had to win that ride in order to be declared in government. Looks like that's going to be the case. They're going to win Kildonan. The PCs are going to hang on to Selkirk, but that wasn't good. It wasn't enough. And the margin that they're hanging on to Selkirk by, they're supposed to dominate Selkirk, and the fact that it's close means that they were giving up margins across the board that they could not afford to give up. So we're drawn to the end of the evening here. I think I'm going to probably call her quits at 10 o'clock. I do want to keep an eye and see if there's any kind of last-second results and surprises that come in. Something we can kind of take a deep dive into. I certainly you saw the map, right? The change from 2019 to 2023. And I mentioned that losing that far south end of Winnipeg was a huge loss. They actually coughed up, I think, 4 seats there in South Winnipeg. So that alone would have just completely changed the nexus of this battle. And then, of course, you're coughing up at least one of the branded seats, possibly 2 of them. And that's your path back to government, right? Those are the seats you're going to have to flip in order to in order to return to government for the PCs. But, they've got this, they got the 4-seat majority. Again, there's enough, there's enough margin that they can work with there. But let's see if any one of those 2 kind of margin seats end up flipping before the night's over. Because once you get that majority down to 31 seats, that's when the math starts getting real interesting, right? But again, it's gonna be interesting.
Who's the first First Nations person to be a premier? So that's going to be national news, and many people, especially young Indigenous people, will be very affected by it. As
Wrong. Speaking as a young Indigenous person, no, I don't identify with Wab Kinew one bit, because he's an NDP and a socialist. I have no I care not for his success and victory. I think him winning premiership is bad for the people of Manitoba. But that's just a personal bias. I don't think I've ever tried to hide that I am conservative, conservative minded. Actually, you know what? The PCs are too far to the left for me. But I think, yeah, it's. I don't identify with the fact that he's the same color of skin as me. What a complete boneheaded thing to say. I, yeah, I don't have much more to say on that topic. Like, I guess I'm happy for anyone that wins an election. It's a euphoric feeling. But I think the people of well, first of all, Brian Pallister's government won 2 consecutive majority governments. Um, it was time for change, and that's really, really hard to come back from. And I remarked in the debate that Wabkanu looked polished. He looked like a leader. He looked like a premier. Oh, this is interesting. The Conservatives actually got better vote percentages in northern Manitoba, but then they dropped across the board, especially in. Now, they only dropped 3 points in Winnipeg. So it shows you, like, you get knocked out of, oh, here we go, 20, 30, we had a couple of flips go. 31-25, let's see where those flips came from. Yeah, this McPhillips flip was surprising to me. I don't think it was like that for most of the night. Ajmaldo went back to blue. Wow, that's a 60 vote. Okay, I thought it was. It looks like 2 5,000s. I thought they were tied for a second, and the other, yeah, Brandon West flipped back. So, yeah, the 2 I thought that might go back to the PCs. Looks like it's gonna be that way. Looks like Heather's gonna be okay in her riding, barely. So I don't expect that we're gonna see her step down tonight. But yeah. Now, what did I say? What did I say when I started this stream? You go back and listen to it. I said I expect the NDP to end up somewhere in that 31 mark. Now, I'm not going to call I can't do a victory lap just yet because, of course, those 2 that just flipped could flip again. So we're not nearly done. There you see the result in Kildonan, right? I mean, it's still close. It's still possible for the PCs to catch and flip that one, which would actually make me look kind of stupid because, the PCs win Kildonan but lose government. That would be odd. That'd be really odd for me to see.
Night for Manitobans and every Canadian. A huge congratulations to Wabkanu, the first First Nations premier elected in.
Oh, they're just reading people's X posts. No one cares. Yeah, the first so Wabkanu is the first Indigenous premier of a major province or of a province in Canada. Our territories also have premiers, and one of them has been Indigenous before. I think we had an Inuit premier up in the Northwest Territories, but certainly not of any of the the provinces of Confederation in Canada. None of them have ever had an Indigenous premier before, and so I mean it's noteworthy. It's interesting to see. When you hear Wabkanu speak, he has just the slightest hint of that Indigenous accent, just ever so slight. It's detectable in his. At least I can pick it up. I don't know if everyone can, but I definitely can pick it up. But other than that, he does speak like a polished and refined person. And so I think going into this election, a lot of people were like, scared of what his government might look like, what an NDP government might look like in this current, in this economic climate. But then as they saw him speak, as they listened to him, and they said, no, he's not too bad. I think I can I think I can live with this guy being my leader, being the premier. And that caused actually a lot of bad things to happen to the Liberal Party. Now their vote share across the board went up versus expected. They're supposed to get 9%. They were supposed to get wiped off. They're supposed to get 9% and win 2 seats. They're at 1 seat, and their vote share went up versus expected. So again, the pollsters had a hard time pinning down that third-party vote, the Liberal vote that went across the city of Winnipeg, where instead it was concentrating in the pockets, which, it almost... so St. Boniface were pretty close. I mean, to go Lamont lost, but he didn't lose, spectacularly. Certainly wasn't blown out of the water there. There you can see his results. I mean, okay, I say that, and actually he has been blown out of the water by 1,400 votes. Still, though, he put up a good fight there. But it just so happens that, again, it's a weird disconnect that the Liberal vote went up across the city of Winnipeg, but also they lost 2 seats. And so rather than their vote concentrating and pocketing, it started spreading out quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see the exit surveys of the people who claim to have voted... concession speech.
What an evening. Thank you all for being here and for your tremendous support. It's been an incredible honor for me to serve Manitoba for the past 23 years. And I'd like to thank... And I'd like to thank each and every one of you who have given me the immense privilege. I have been a candidate for 7 elections, and I respect the will of the voters, and today the voters have spoken. I want to thank the residents of the great constituency of Tuxedo. I have served the community for the last 23 years. It's my family. It's a place where my family have called home for generations. Moments ago, I called Wab Kinew to congratulate him on becoming the next Premier of Manitoba. Mr. Kinew and I don't always agree on everything, but like me, I know that he loves this province and he loves the people of Manitoba. And I wish him all the best and will make every effort in a smooth transition in the premiership. This election was a very important one, and the historic nature of Mr. Kinew's victory must be acknowledged here this evening. Wab, I hope that your win tonight inspires a future generation of Indigenous youth to get involved in our democratic process, not just here in Manitoba, but right across the country. Wab, congratulations for that. So there are a few thank yous that I'd like to make this evening to our campaign co-chairs, to Candace Bergen and to Joe Bova, to my campaign manager and friend, Marnie Larkin, and there are so many others who have played an integral role in this campaign. You know who you are, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank each and every one of you for being involved in this incredible campaign. To our team of candidates, to our volunteers
And members, thank you for putting your trust in me and for stepping up to serve your community. I also want to recognize those who are not with us this evening and who have represented their communities very diligently over the course of the last number of years, those MLAs who were not re-elected tonight. My heart goes out to you, and I thank each and every one of you for representing your communities with dignity. Thank you so much for your service to Manitoba. And to our newly elected MLAs from all sides of the House, I offer special congratulations. I remember the excitement I felt when I first was elected that night, and I hope you feel the same way. You have captured the optimism and the confidence of your community. Congratulations to each and every one of you this evening. We all know, those of us who have put our name on the ballot in the past, that we can't do this on our own. We can't do this without the support of our family. To Jason, to Victoria, to Tommy, who are here with me tonight, thank you for always standing with me. Thank you for being there with me. We know that there has been some great times in the past 23 years, and there's been some challenging times, no doubt. But every step of the way you have been with me, and I could not have done it without you. Thank you so much. Tonight, I stand before you feeling honored to have served as your Premier. Together, we have been able to accomplish so much in just under 2 years. We have faced unprecedented challenges, including a global pandemic, the unjust war in Ukraine, and challenging economic times. Yet we were able to move Manitoba forward. We implemented the largest personal income tax cuts in Manitoba history. We made our province more competitive. We made significant advancements in economic reconciliation with Indigenous communities. We brought the budget back to balance while making historic investments in healthcare and education and in social services. Our progressive conservative government has set up our province for great success. Now, I have served in opposition in the past, so I understand the fundamental role that opposition plays in our democracy. As we head to the other side of the House, I can tell Manitobans that the team of PC MLAs that you elected tonight will keep fighting for you, and we will hold the new government's feet to the fire. But friends, it is with a heavy heart tonight that I am announcing that I will be stepping down as the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba.
There it is.
And I look forward to meeting with caucus and the party executive to prepare the path forward from tonight. And I look forward to working with the party to ensure a smooth process is in place to replace me as your leader. It has been the honor of my life, serving the people of Manitoba with the many roles that I have held over the years. And I thank all Manitobans from the bottom of my heart for giving me the privilege to serve as the first women premier in this beautiful province of ours. Thank you so much tonight.
Though not the first elected. All right, so both party leaders stepping down at the end of the campaign. I wasn't sure I was going to see Heather do it. Man. But then, of course, you heard how long she's been an MLA in Manitoba, and I think today was just the day she decided that it's time for me to leave, right? She barely won re-election in her own riding, a riding that should have been very safe. You can see the CBC reporter there crowding everyone. And so yeah, as the premier, I think those are actually those are Manitoba sheriffs. The one with the cuff speaker, you can see he was talking into, because she is the sitting premier, and she still is the premier until she hands power over to the NDP. But yeah, she gets that's her security detail, and then of course one of those guys in the suits would have been, I think the blue suit would have been her campaign manager or her husband. I didn't quite catch who that was, but yeah, the black suit, especially the one guy you saw talking into his cuff, those would be the responsible for security of the premier. We don't have a secret service in Canada. Federal government workers, or I guess the federal government, is protected by the federal police, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. They don't wear their red. They have traditional red suits. When you think of the Mounties, the red traditional dress garb that they wear. But the security for the prime minister does not wear that. They're plain clothes, right? They kind of look like Secret Service agents, but without the dark sunglasses because it's never sunny in Canada. Well, they called Brandon East, so yeah, Brandon East was lost to the NDP. That margin was way too big. The PCs took the lead again in Brandon West. That margin is still really close, so that might not hold up. We'll have to see. But yeah, you're starting to see across the board that the races are getting called, that they have enough votes in to say, yeah, this person won, that person ain't catching up. We'll go look at the map again in a second, but just want to... So yeah, the federal government is protected by RCMP, but the provincial governments, there are... not all provincial governments have provincial police forces. Ontario has one. They have the Ontario Provincial Police, and so they protect Premier Doug Ford. We're also gonna stick around for Wab Kinu's speech because I want you to listen to how this man speaks. He is a talented and gifted speaker, good orator, and like obviously those are the skills you need to be in government to win premiership. It's very hard for an intellectual to kind of big brain their way into government. I mean, it's not impossible. It's happened. People said Stephen Harper had the charisma of a rock when he won his minority government and became prime minister. But it's not something that's easy to replicate. Typically you need a really good, smooth-talking person to lead a country. In Justin Trudeau's case, yeah, he might be a bad orator, but he is a smooth talker, and he certainly used his appeal to the common person to ride that way to victory. At the same time, he also beat a country that was fatigued with a 9-year prime minister in power. Yeah, we'll check it in once Wab Kinu does his speech. I'll unmute and listen into him. Get gauge for yourself what kind of a speaker he is. And it is pretty. I've been in the room where you have to make that phone call. The moment that right? So the election analyst comes in and says, yeah, we just got mathematically eliminated. You remember, I called it maybe 5-10 minutes before CBC did, right? So that's the part where I would go to the leader, or I'd go to the campaign manager, and I'd say, it's over, we're done, we lost. And then the campaign manager goes to the candidate, delivers the news, gets the speech ready, the concession speech, because the premier would have a speechwriter to help kind of put their emotions, their feelings into words. Speechwriters tend to be very trusted, close friends of the politician. Someone that can talk in the politician's voice. They know kind of how they speak to people and can put that into words on the paper, and then the person would be comfortable reading that paper when they come out and give the speech. The next thing you would do once that kind of emotional shock kind of passes, the first thing you would do then is you would call your opponent and concede. And you heard Lamont make that, he made reference to that earlier in the night when he gave his concession speech in resignation. He said that he had a phone call with his opponent. And so that's what you would do. Once you realize that you've lost, you would call up your opponent and congratulate them. There is like a fraternity in the political sphere. You'll see, NDP and PCs might be bitter enemies when it comes to the ballot box, but then they get to the legislature and you'll see them have lunch together. Like they're not enemies in the human sense. They're only enemies in the ideological sense. So, there is a camaraderie between candidates. Of course, I said earlier, like it's never easy to put your name on the piece of paper and subject yourself to that, all of the stress that it takes to run and put your face in front of the cameras every day, and know that you got to understand opposition research. Every single moment of your entire history goes out on blast in a cannon. The media, especially like fringe media, and it's not just left or both the left and the right do this. Oh, there was a seat flip there. Both the left and the right do this. The far left has their kind of pro-communist, hardcore socialist supporters that run these online media sites. And then, of course, the right and the far right will have their media websites and whatever. And they will go looking for dirt on people. They will call up, you'll get asked, like, where did you go to school? Where'd you go to high school? They will start calling people and say, hey, yeah, the person's this old, so they would have graduated this year from that high school. I'm going to go through the yearbook. I'm going to start calling people and say, hey, you got some dirt on this person. Well, yeah, one time when they were 16, they said the N-word, as a joke. And suddenly that comes out on blast. We saw this with Justin Trudeau's blackface scandal. And I'm sure he never, back when he actually put the blackface on, I'm sure he never thought that would come out how many ever years later it was as a politician. Another seat, a couple seats flipped there. So to put the entirety of your personal history goes out on a cannon. It's like the worst form of doxing that there ever is, and for some reason it's acceptable. We go with it because we want our person to win and we want the other one to lose. So we're okay with dragging their entire personal life through the mud. And that's it can never be easy to subject yourself to that, to willingly do that. And I gotta say that that camaraderie is really reflected when you make that phone call, because and sometimes opponents have each other's phone numbers, right? They do. They have their cell phone numbers. They'll share them. Yeah, you make that phone call. And what you're saying, I've listened in. I've actually advised someone on how to make these kind of phone calls before. I've been in that room, and the phone call is very simple, matter of fact, down to business, because the person who lost is extremely emotional, right? And you don't want to break down, and you don't want to cry. Oh, Dauphin flipped. That's the one that flipped. Okay. 4-vote lead. Wow. There's still 18 polls left to report, and the lead is 4 votes. Very interesting. Very fascinating. I love the sunlight hitting that Marcel Broski. Huh. Cool name. Like the photo. Anyways, Yeah, they said this was going to be the bellwether seat. I don't see it one bit. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, yeah, obviously, there's Wobkinu. He's going in for speech. We'll join him in a second. But just to finish up the thought on the concession speech, the phone call that you make to your opponent. Again, very matter of fact, down to business. What you say is, looks like we're going to come up a little bit short, right? Congratulations on your victory. I hope that you're able to represent all of the people, all the constituents in this riding. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for putting your name forward, right? And then obviously, you'll most of the time you'll get that reciprocated back at you. You'll get the thank you for putting your name forward. You ran a great campaign. You should be proud of yourself, right? And your volunteers. So, and then the phone call ends. You don't linger on that phone call for very long. End the call. And then if you do address the media, it depends. Like, the leader of the party will address the media. Not all the candidates who lose will address the media. Sometimes they just put out a press release, a statement, especially if it's a riding that wasn't expected to be very close or competitive at all. So that's kind of what goes on kind of behind the doors, behind the scenes, behind the closed doors there. And then, of course, once that phone call's done, you bring your candidate out and let's listen into Wobkinu. But yeah, you bring your candidate out and they address all the volunteers.
Listen in.
Yeah, huge. Like, the emotion of winning an election, especially when you throw out the incumbent government.
This is a great victory for us. This is a great victory for all of us in Manitoba.
You can hear just a hint of the accent, right? Manitoba.
Wow. Manitoba.
Toba.
Dear, sweet Manitoba, look at what we have done here tonight. A lot of people in the big cities, they look down on us here in Manitoba. Flyover country, they said. Winter peg, man, it's cold out, they said.
That's true. That is true.
What little old Manitoba did tonight. Manitoba did something more progressive than any of those big cities ever did.
What a coincidence. It was actually the big city that made it happen.
A strong team of New Democrats to fix healthcare and make your life more affordable.
That's by running the economy into the ground. Yeah, anyways. No, listen to him talk, though. He is a good speaker.
To the people in healthcare, to the people working in the bedside today, to the people thinking of pursuing a career, to healthcare workers across the country, in other provinces around the world, I have a simple message to you. We need you. We are doing exciting things with healthcare here in Manitoba. We're going to build new emergency rooms. We're going to build a new cancer care headquarters. More clinician researchers to bring the best quality care to you, the people of Manitoba. And so, for all the people out there who work in healthcare, we need you. the nurses, the doctors, the healthcare professionals, the healthcare aides, we need you to work with us to build something special here in the healthcare system in Manitoba. I want to speak to the young Nietzsches out there. I want to speak to young people from all backgrounds. Really, I want to speak to people of all ages, but I want to speak to young Nietzsches in particular. I was given a second chance in life. And I would like to think that I've made good on that opportunity. And you can do the same. Here's how. My life became immeasurably better when I stopped making excuses and I started looking for a reason. And I found that reason in our family. I found that reason in our community. And I found that reason in our province and country. And so to young people out there who want to change your life for the better, you can do it. But here's the thing. You have to want it. You have to want it. If you want to leave the party lifestyle behind, it has to be you to make the decision. If you want to join the workforce, get a new career, it has to be you to take the first step. And if you're dealing with some kind of illness and you want to find healing, it has to be you to decide to move forward. I can't do that for you. A government can't do that for you. You have to be the person to decide to take the first step. But here is what our government can do. Looking at the team right now. Government. Sounds pretty good, huh? But here's what our government can do. If you decide to take the first step and leave the addictions behind, our government will make sure that there is a path to recovery for you. If you decide to go to work, our government will make sure that there is a training program with a good job at the end of it waiting for you. And if you decide to get out of bed one more day to fight the cancer, then our government is going to make sure that you have the best quality cancer care of anywhere in the world right here in Manitoba. I want more Manitobans to hear those four magic words. You are cancer-free. And so to young people who are looking for a positive path, I want to share the words that my father always told us. Ando buachigek. Seek your vision. Seek your vision. Dreams come true.
I think you're starting to see how
To people in rural Manitoba.
People. You can hear the accent. It just comes out every so slightly on some words, right? But you could definitely tell the difference between his speaking ability and Heather Stephenson's speaking ability. And I think ultimately that was the margin in this election. When people heard them speak, they're like, oh, yeah, I can vote for that guy. And then they heard Heather speak and they're like, yeah, she's not really convincing me to leave, to, not vote, I'm not sure about the NDP and their policies, but I like Wab Kinew. I think I can vote for him. Heather Stephenson inspires no confidence with her speaking ability. So, anyways,
sitting down with you.
I mean, he's gonna do a lot of like when you're the victor. This speech goes on for a very, very long time. It's 10 o'clock. It's past 10 o'clock, so I'm gonna wrap up. Just have a quick look at the map before I sign off for tonight. There's northern Manitoba. It went exactly as expected. There's Flin Flon for you. Flin Flon, greatest name ever. We saw the Flippin' Dauphin. Whether that'll hold up through the night, who knows? Still a lot of votes to count, and a 4-vote difference. Manitoba or Brandon, sorry, went back to PC, but of course, 17-vote difference. Not close to the decisive yet. Brandon East is settled. Back over here. Of course, this has been going back and forth all night, as we saw. 49 votes. Still out there, 63 votes. But there's one polling station left to report, so they're almost out of time there. You're going to make up that 63-vote difference. So, Waverly, Lejeune-Moldière, I think Kildonan's done. Yeah, 476 votes with only 3 polls left. I think that's too much to make up. So Kildonan's done. So the only 4 ridings left to settle are Lejeune-Moldière, Waverly, Dauphin, and Brandon West. Honestly, they could go either way. It's going to be really... let's see. They're 3 of 4 currently orange. So... Yeah, that's interesting. If they all go the PC way, they can knock that majority down to 30 seats. I don't see all 4 going their way, though. Maybe 3 of 4. They might ultimately steal Dauphin. Hard to say if they're... Oh, I'd say of these two, Lejeune-Moldière is probably more likely than Waverly to go blue. If they run the board on all 4 and knock this NDP majority down to 30 seats, that has big implications when it comes to the seat count. You know, you elect a speaker, now you're at 29. The PCs are at 26. And then, of course, the one Liberal vote out there, which 27 against you. So now you only have 2 MLAs that are in excess, but even then, having a 2 MLA majority is certainly better than having a no MLA majority. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up for tonight. There's not really anything out there I can see. Nothing else that I can see changing. I think... Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to take Kildonan out of the equation. I think that's settled, that's called. Yeah, it's just these 2 in Winnipeg. The 1 in Brandon, and then Dauphin. I want to see what happened here with McPhillips. In very small, very tight race, very small lead there. It just flipped suddenly. I don't think I was expecting it, but interesting to see what happens there. I guess, yeah, so this would be... We'll replace Kildonan with this one as the 4th, or the 5th close riding, right? So there's 5 of them that are really close. And this one's still, like, closer than I think you'd want it to be. Could you imagine if it just flips orange at the very last second? But not that it changes the calculation a whole lot. But anyways, yeah, so there are 5 races that are really close, right? McPhillips, Lejeune-Moldière, Waverly, Brandon West, and Dauphin. The PCs currently are leading in 2 of them. The NDP's got 3 of 5. So, you know, knock 3 here and add 3 there. You know, if the NDP flips both of them, it could go up to a 35-seat majority and take this down to a 20-seat opposition. That certainly would be outside of my realm of expectations, and that turnout coming up to 46% now. Where is? I'm not going to do percentages here. I'm not going to aggregate all of that. Yeah, on the Liberal Party. Well, we'll see. We'll see. What is left accountant often? Yeah, they still got quite a few ballot boxes to get through, so I don't think we're gonna get a resolution on that tonight. It's too close. Let's see, with Brandon, you only got a 17 vote there. What's left out? So one ballot box from election day, and then the vote anywhere boxes. Keep in mind, there will be a lot of those that have 0 votes in them, so it's really hard to say kind of what the night's going to shape up as. Yeah. It doesn't tell you exactly which of those out of riding boxes were counted, and so you're left to speculate. Well, are those in Winnipeg, or are they out and around Brandon? How many were like just across the city? Really hard to say. Yeah. Well, I hope that was interesting. Hope you guys had fun. I think I'm gonna zoom out, or I'm gonna zoom into Wisconsin. Here, let me zoom into Wisconsin for old time's sake. Over here. Yeah, I'm gonna zoom in on Wisconsin. Alright, guys. Hope you enjoyed the coverage tonight. Hope you learned something. As always, have a good one. Peace.